Okay.
Thank you.
You guys all good to start now then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, welcome everybody. This is the November 16th meeting of the Merrimack Village District Board of Commissioners meeting. I want to read a statement. Due to COVID-19 and the state of the emergency, public participation will be offered by webinar. You can join the webinar by going to a web link that is on the meeting agenda that's posted on mvdwater.org, and or you can call the number 1-646-876-9923 and enter webinar ID 872-1980-2723. And as a courtesy, we have Merrimack TV who is recording this meeting, and it's going to be posted on their website at a later date. So again, that web link is, you can go on the MVD website, mvdwater.org, pull up today's agenda, and there's a web link on that that you can click on. And it's a long link, so I wasn't going to read the whole thing on air here. So with that, I guess we can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll let our MVD office take the lead on that as we have the flag there.
Yeah, that's super.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and before we get started, I'm just going to go through a roll call poll just to make sure we have all the commissioners signed on here, and looks like we got John on too. Great. So if everybody wants to just state where they are calling from, and if there's anybody in the room with them, hopefully everybody's free and alone. I'll start myself. I'm at my home at 6 Wasserman Heights, and I'm by myself. Wolf. Oh, you're muted, Wolf.
I just noticed that. Thank you. So, Wolfram von Schön, I'm in my camp, in my driveway at my home at 4 Conservation Drive, and I'm by myself.
Nice. Ken Ayers.
This is Ken Ayers from my home, 19 Jakes Lane, Merrimack, and by myself.
And John.
I'm at 25 Windsor. I am by myself.
Okay. And I am not in the Caribbean, unfortunately. This is just a backdrop. So, okay, good. I think at this point, we can start with the Finance and Human Resources Review with Michelle Holton, Analysis of Revenue and Expenditures Report.
Sure. Michelle, do you have the revised ones for us?
And I think there was some new, there was a new email that came out, I believe, right, Michelle?
Yes, we had to revise some of the revenue numbers. The totals were correct, but the meter revenue had inadvertently got combined with the water usage revenue. So I corrected that, so and sent out the revised numbers.
Okay.
So with the year completing October, we are a third of the way through the year, and we'll use that as a reference point for the budget that's put in with the entire year's numbers. As you can see, with the budget comparison, we are for domestic and mercantile. Domestic actually still coming above budget. Mercantile, we are right at budget. I have been making adjusting entries from the 3-year analysis and the actuals that have come in, because I have been seeing that for the mercantile commercial, for the retail element of the mercantile revenue line, and also for schools. Obviously, we've had those numbers fluctuating. So I've been looking at how those are coming along and adjusting down in the unbilled revenue accrual. But so far to date, as I said, we're just hitting the mercantile number at 40 and at 40.2% for domestic. Industrial is off at 22.4%, but it is an overall much smaller budget. Our meter charges, hydrant and sprinkler, counts 404, 40403, and 40404 as our base charges. Still are staying steady. We're going to be looking into the communication tower rental. That's off where we thought it would be. I believe we had planned for another contract coming on that that may have fell through. So I'm going to look into that. That's account 40406, as well as 40412 backflow. The number's low. We are now billing backflow with the regular water bill. But still, for this point in time, it is low. So I just want to be sure that it's just a timing issue. We have had a good amount of entrances come in, account 40413, which is already above the $30,000 budget that we had put out for that line item. And also to note, as we did last month, the SDC charges that are collected with entrance are now being recorded as other income. So we'll see those below the net ordinary income line at the end of the reporting. So overall revenues are at 36.8%. Last year's actual to budget was at 41.4%. So we are, as expected, with various factors that are impacting the revenues, including both the COVID, the drought, and also that we haven't done the rate increase. So we're just going to keep monitoring how the actuals are coming in, adjusting our accruals, and assess, where we stand as far as revenues with all those factors combined. Does anyone have any particular questions?
I did want to say that with the backflow, that's because our entire season was blown with the pandemic. We weren't able to do all of our backflow testing because some of them are in-house, some in people's homes, but some are in stores or such where they did not, businesses that didn't want for people in there. So we missed a whole season of backflow testing.
So, well, we have, now was that something that's just, are they all once a year? So it'll just simply pushes the schedule forward for them, or would they do?
Some are twice a year.
Okay. Okay, so we can just keep an eye on how that levels out. Did anyone have any other questions on the revenues? Oh, okay. So looking at expenses, our salary expenses combined are below the 33%. We do see in officer salaries that we are slightly above, and we've addressed that before with both the factor that we had 2 ex-commissioners that were still on duty in July, and also we have changed the level of detail that we're doing in our recording of minutes. So our secretary salary expense will be more than what we projected at the time when we built the budget. Going to page 2, line 60200 for uniforms. That once again is just a timing issue. We preload the uniform cards for the field staff. We also had ordered various other uniforms as well as boots. So that's just an element, as I said, of preloading the cards and some early year expenditures. For account 60500 motor vehicle expense, our truck inspections are in September. So as expected, we saw quite a bit of repairs on various vehicles to get through inspection. Moving down to account 60850, property taxes. That is our Hollis tax bill. So there will be 2 bills this year, so that's just a matter of the timing of where they fall. 70010, office equipment. Our meeting camera at $2,500 and new computer employee setup at about $2,000 is the bulk of that. Account 70150, R&M chemical injection, includes a digital sensor and controller that was $3,500. Account 70525, R&M office expense. We've had some work with Second Source, our IT support, as well as Itron, which is our meter reading software, hardware and software support. And we've also done our conversion from MVS to FCS, and the new annual support contract for that has come on there. 80300 meeting expense. We had our annual meeting in July, so the Malloy Sound bill for over $2,100 is what makes up that figure there. Are there any expense account line items on this page that anyone has a question on or comment? Okay, and page 3, as far as our debt payments, those are simply the timing issues of when they're made. The budget is completely in sync with our amortization schedules for the various loans and bonds. So those will all sort out by year end. Overall, we're coming in with a net ordinary expense of $342,000 as compared to last year. Last year we were at $497,000. So both the combination of our revenues being off, and we've spent about a little over $76,000 more at this point in the year. A lot of those are just various timing issues. We do have an increase in salaries from year to year overall to date of 7.5%. The health insurance, if we're looking at the profit and loss previous year comparison, page 2, the health and dental
Michelle?
insurance, yes.
Just quick, I just want to make sure that is clear. When we see an increase of 7.5% in salaries, that's not because we have given raises in the amount of 7.5%. That's also because of added staffing, correct?
Correct, yes. We've, between the 2 years, well, since a year ago, July, we've had one resignation, 2 retirements, 4 new hires, a new position created, and 2 department changes. So we've had quite a bit of moving around and changes.
Yeah, I just don't want anybody to hear something that's not correct. So
Okay,
thank
no,
you.
thank you. And also something to point out, the health and dental insurance, they're showing at over 20% change there. And that's a matter of also the timing. The retirements last year were in September and October. So we had 2 full-time staff drop off, and the new staff just were coming on there, so they were not on the insurance either. So that was diminished because of just some changes in the staffing that was on the plan. So overall, page 3, the prior year comparison, our net ordinary income is $155,000 less than last year. As I said, we'll keep looking at the revenues, also the expenses as we see how the revenues play out and we get closer to the end of the year. Some items such as we have $15,000 set aside for some website development. We're also looking to upgrade our accounting system. 2 things we definitely do want to do, but they are things that, if need be, and we decide to wait till July 1 of next year to say go on those, that will be fine too. So we're just going to keep monitoring things. Does anyone have a particular question on any prior year comparisons or expense line items? Okay. Okay. I want to look to the bank balances. I just wanted to make a couple of notes so the folks are aware. The operating account, I have moved $250,000 just as a transfer to both Turkey Hill and 2, 3, 7, and 8. Sometimes the loan and grant payments that we're awaiting and when the applications are due are crossing. So I'm just giving us some cushion there if need be for a week or so. We're finally should be set up completely with electronic payment by the state that should be starting this week. So I think after that we should be good, but that just took a little time to get set up and working smoothly. I've also moved $273,000 from the operating to the well 4 and 5 account 10102. That's the account where we're going to be eventually taking $673 from capital reserves to pay the balance remaining. So I just moved the $273. I'll move an additional $4 when needed. And then once all those invoices for that project are paid, we'll seek the reimbursement from capital reserves. Wells 4 and 5 also will have some money that will move back to the operating account. We received over $400,000 in funds for the original settlement that was expense reimbursements that we put in the account to also help with some of the cash flow issues as we were waiting for various reimbursements from the grants and from the settlement proceeds. So once that is all complete, those funds will revert back to the operating account. So there's also the 405K matching grant monies that all flowed through that account, but ultimately we'll send everything back to the main operating once we close that up. Does anyone have any questions on any particular bank balances? Nope, okay.
I have a general question, Michelle.
Yes.
We had talked before about accruals for some of those, like debt services, for example, that are hitting us at certain times of the year, and you know, some of the larger ticket items that are hitting us once or twice in a year, and that are making our bottom line, you know, fluctuating beyond what it should be, or beyond what it could be, I should say. And I realized that there were other priorities, but is that still something that's on your radar to look into at one point?
Yeah, I think that we can look that out to sort of smooth things out so that we just don't see the spikes, even though we know the reference point, but it'll just make things just appear more in line with how things will come out at the end of the year. So that's something we can actually look for even this coming month, because we've got the next couple of weeks of November to wrap some things up. And then the way the schedule falls for December, we've got almost 3 full weeks before the next meeting. So we can work on that for the very next meeting.
Yeah, and I'm not asking for that. I just, you know, wanted to ask if that was still something we have planned.
I think particularly those items will help just because they're larger.
Right.
So, and then we also
I think even the uniforms, you know, we talk about those almost every meeting, and I think if we were working with accruals for that, we wouldn't have to even talk about it.
Well, so far we'd have to change some of the process that we do.
Sure.
That we do for that with the staff, but we can definitely look at that. And we have taken some of the IT contracts for the utility billing and also for Elements, the asset management. We've pulled those onto prepaids, and we're now allocating those out monthly. So
Great.
Those were some of the larger dollars.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
So you want to move on to the senior accountant job description?
Yes.
Away she goes. Bye.
Good night.
So I knew this came up last month, I believe. And can you just explain maybe anything that changed since we discussed this last month?
Certainly, as it was conveyed to me, the main question on the senior accountant job description was to add clarity for the role's direction, supervisory direction. So we did clarify it to be directly reporting to the finance and HR director's role. And obviously, Jill, as business manager, oversees all of admin, and Ron, all of us. So we did make that update as requested. Are there any particular questions for me on the job description in general or specific items, since I wasn't here last time? What we're really looking for is truly having someone who's not only going to be able to jump in and have the ability to do, the ability and the willingness to do anything, because when you're small, it's what we need. So like I said, it's important for them both to have the capability and the willingness to do it. And one of the factors we've really been struggling with how to take care of is the cross-training that we need, where we've all been sort of pushed to a rather full set of duties for ourselves. It's been really hard. You know, I've learned some of the billing process that Amy, as our customer service and billing rep, handles. And other folks we've cross-trained with payroll and some components of finance and accounting, but we really felt with the growth that we're going to be having, with all the additional treatment plants and all the things that we've been wanting to get to do, it's just some more analysis, perhaps some more comparison. Our budgets are going to get much more complex. So we really need someone who can kind of jump in on all that and share all that, and also truly completely become a backup for myself or Amy's role. So that's what inspired us wanting to do this. Physically, we had one desk left, you know, so it's sort of like we really need to demand a lot of this one position. And that's where I felt like it fell most reasonably to this level of a senior accountant. So any questions?
I wanted to make a comment quick,
Sure.
that I see job descriptions quite a bit.
Yes.
That, you know, my organization and sometimes that of customers, and that one is actually pretty damn good. Whoever wrote it did a nice job. It's comprehensive, it's easy to read. I think it addresses fairly clearly what the scope and the expectation for their positions are, and what the skill set is. So I think that job description is going to be a great way to figure out who to hire and to hold that person accountable. So, and give some guidance to that person. So I think that's a job well done.
Okay, thank you. And the associated salary schedule, we have the range hourly from $24 to $36, which would equate to an annual of $49,920 to $74,880. I did email along some additional information on local salary ranges. I don't know if folks were able to access them. That was just this afternoon, but just to give you an idea of what I found from, just go to salary.com on a level 2 government accountant in the Bedford area, came in at almost 65.9. In the Derry area, 67.7. In Merrimack, 69.6. And in Salem, New Hampshire, 68, almost 68.6. As well as in 2018, there was a survey done by Durham that included Bedford, Dover, Exeter, Hampton, Hanover, Londonderry, Merrimack, Rochester, Somersworth, and of course Durham, in their average minimum salary to maximum salary range came in at $25.39 to $34.80. So, and that was, as I said, that was 2 years ago. So, you know, our numbers are in line with what we're seeing out there from surveys. They're in line with what I've seen in past positions. We have a lot of expectation for the role. And so I think that the salary is in line with that. And I think there's, you know, enough range, you know, that we'll have with our raise system to allow them, you know, to have some years of growth before they're going to max out. Any questions?
Do you need us to vote on this, or is this something that's already in the works?
How have we,
Accepted as a position.
the position would need to be accepted, and then also the new salary schedule would need to be approved. So just adding that one line.
This isn't budgeted for though yet, right? In the current operating budget.
In this current year, we budgeted for the maximum 24.79. Actually, this has some adjustments. I think it was 24.40 an hour is what we budgeted for. But we also had put in, and we're not seeing it on the P&L right now. We still have to do the breakout for salaries. But what we're proposing to do is to shift whatever monies we need from our overtime budget to this salary line so that it holds us accountable that we're taking on someone at this level of pay, and we're assuming that there's going to be the offset that we're not going to be utilizing the overtime.
Is this position going to help us expedite some of the projects that we have still to tackle, like the, you know, like bill pay and some of those projects that we're working on?
It's
Electronic bill pay.
definitely a role that's going to help us move forward and implement those projects. But I did mention that we have it down to 2 software firms for a new utility billing, which would also encompass all the payment options. With the revenues being up and down for various reasons, we were wanting to see how things started to level off, hoping that with the drought not having as much of an impact as it has previously, and getting more of a sense of where the COVID numbers are impacting us, as well as I wanted to get an update on what we're doing with rates. So that might be something that just waits until maybe, most of the companies are very flexible, that they would even start with us with a small deposit, as long as we sign off on a schedule for the payments to get the project underway. But it would definitely be someone who would have both the technical capability, the analytical ability, and organizational ability to help move all that forward.
Ron, Jill, you both support this?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Or if not, then maybe somebody could make a motion to accept the position in that salary range.
I'll move.
All right, motion
make
by
the motion.
Wolf, and to accept the senior accountant position. And should we specify that salary range of $49,920 to $74,880?
I think that's a separate motion to accept the salary schedule, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the salary schedule is printed.
Yeah, the salary schedule as proposed. Yep.
All right, so the first motion is on the position itself, senior accountant position. That motion made by Wolf. Anybody want to second that?
I'll second it. I can.
All right, second by Ken. Any other discussion? If not, we can go ahead and vote on that. All right, so let's do a roll call. Wolf, how do you vote?
In favor?
Ken?
In favor?
John?
Favor?
And myself, I'm in favor, so that carries 4-0-0. And now we can make a motion to accept the senior accountant salary range. That would be from 49,920 to 74,880. Someone wants to make a motion on that?
I have a quick question on that. Was there any other changes? Was there any other changes over the previous one on this salary schedule? Or
No,
was it just adding that line item?
it's just adding that line item. We had previously updated for the COLA.
Mhm.
And then all that's changing here is the highlighted in blue senior accountant range.
Okay. And this is a hourly position, non-exempt position?
Yes.
Is that common?
In the municipal world and in both union and non-union, I have found it to be non-exempt. Our goal here is that it's really going to bring us to a point of eliminating finance and HR billing overtime by and large. I mean, occasionally, we're always going to run into a situation when we're wrapping up budget, perhaps, or audit, or something goes awry while we're trying to send out the billings. We may have a few hours, but our expectation is that it will dramatically reduce the overtime budget for finance and HR.
I just realized that it's really only the business manager and the superintendent that are salaried, and I'm assuming they're salaried exempt, right?
Yes.
So neither the finance HR director nor the operations manager are salaried exempt.
They have not been. I think that's something that we can be all open to review. Changing the status there, especially as things have shifted the last couple of years.
And as the district is growing, right? So, okay, I was just surprised by that. I just realized that. So, okay.
No, there are quite a few positions that are still deemed non-exempt, and it does seem to be a difference between corporate and municipal, as far as what I found.
Mhm.
All right, any other questions? Anybody want to make a motion?
Do we need to move just this one line on the sheet?
No, the
Yep.
whole schedule.
Yes,
Well,
just accept the update, the proposed update to the salary schedule, adding the senior accountant's range, salary range.
Yeah, I'll move we do that.
All right,
Yeah, what she said.
motion by John.
Second,
Was that a second by Ken?
correct. Second by Ken.
I think he said yes.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. No
You
further
stop petting the dog.
any further discussion on this? If not, then we'll call a roll call. John, how do you vote?
I'm in favor.
And Ken, how do you vote?
In favor?
Wolf?
In favor.
And I'm also in favor, so that carries 4-0-0. Thank you. Next on the agenda is a motion regarding acceptance and expenditures of CARES funds received in the amount of $13,756.32. I didn't see any info in our packet, so you guys are probably going to need to explain this, what this is about.
I was looking, I just have a summary of what it was for. Let's see.
Basically, while she's looking that up, we compiled all of our expenses that we had up to a certain point, and submitted them to the town, who submitted for reimbursement through the CARES Act. So that's the amount that was approved. The only thing that they didn't approve was just, I think there was a couple meals that we had a break during then.
Oh, here we go.
thing.
Yep, I found it.
So it was for legal. Well, go ahead, Michelle.
Sure. These were for expenses that we incurred directly related to the COVID situation, above and beyond what we normally would have spent in these areas. So for safety, it was approximately $3,030. Setting up all the remote for employees, both staff working remotely and all our meeting remote access was $5,974. Additional cleaning, $720 in products. Staff wages, $3,213, and legal, $820. And that totaled the $13,756.32, which was reimbursed to us, as Jill stated, through the state, from the Governor's Office for Emergency Relief and Recovery as part of the Coronavirus CARES Act.
Okay,
So we expended the funds, and we received the reimbursement, so we just have to acknowledge that receipt, and that we're going to allow that to cover those expenses to date.
Okay.
And we may have, Jill, will we have additional?
Not, I don't know if we have enough to come up with, but it'd be something we can look at.
Okay.
so again, being chair, not customarily making motions, I'm gonna ask if anybody wants to make a motion to accept these, the funds for the CARES fund in the amount of $13,756.32.
I'll move.
Motion by Wolf. I have a second.
Seconded by Ken.
Second by Ken. All right, any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and do a roll call. Wolf, how do you vote?
In favor?
Ken?
In favor?
John?
Favor?
Myself, I'm in favor, so that carries 4-0-0. And I think the last item is on Michelle's plate anyway, is the encumbered funds.
Yes, for the year ending fiscal year 20, last June, we had 13,000. We had a spreadsheet that was included with the October packet. I don't know if everyone still has that available for reference. I'm going to need to send this for your DocuSign for your electronic signature anyways, but I can just let you know what this is for is expenses that we had at the end of the year that we had a signed contract or agreement that they were to come out of, expected to have come out of the prior or the year endings budget and did not. So we're allowed to encumber them going forward. And even some when we have extenuating circumstances, we're allowed to carry over for multiple years. So we have almost 14,000 on Hutchinson and Turkey Hill tank improvements from 17. And we had 21,000, and it details out the various timeframes and exact amounts, but we had 21,000 for both the meter reading software upgrade, Elements Asset Management. We did a configuration for the treatment department after the distribution department was up and running. And then also for the landscaping cleanup and renovation that was done. That was coming from FY19. At the end of FY20, we had approximately 52,000, which was funds left on the wells 7 and 8 repair and cleaning, root salt mitigation project, the Turkey Hill tank inspection and cleaning, randomly a couple of iPads that they just never invoiced us for, but we received. And then also constructing the walkway around the MVD office. So all those add up to 86,703. I can email this to everyone along with our auditor's summary of what makes something permissible to be encumbered, which all of these were things that we had either ordered the product or we had a signed agreement, and it just didn't get spent by the end of the year. So we just get to carry those funds forward as long as there are sufficient funds from that year versus using the next year's budget dollars. So there's just a sign-off sheet that I can also send along, set up with a DocuSign, and you can review and let me know any questions either you have now or when I send it over tomorrow.
Okay, anybody have any questions for Michelle on that?
So yeah, I guess just in general, we get these requests for us to sign off on financials. And I just heard you say we're audited.
Yes, we are audited annually.
So what's the genesis of having the commissioners sign off on these things? I'd asked this question when I got my first one, but I really never got the answer. Maybe it's something you want to address offline. Is this part of the bylaws? Is it just something we've always done? Like, I don't really understand, intimately enough to give approval on these expenses, the day-to-day happenings of MVD.
The RSAs for selectmen or commissioners' duties does include that you authorize, it's, and the way we've conducted it, it's in conjunction with the administration in the day-to-day of MVD. So who's ever closest to the expense, who knows how much it should have been, was it received, were there any issues, what account should it get coded to? Sometimes I might be jotting that down on the invoice, or Dave Frederickson, our operations manager, or Jill Lavoie, our business manager. All of those expenses then are reviewed by Ron. And so then we put them collectively in what's called a manifest, an AP manifest that lists them, so that then at that level, you're reviewing to make sure that there's been sort of proper due diligence on our part, that there's been an approval process, there's reasonable coding of where things are going to, how we're doing against budget. So selectmen, commissioners have the responsibility to approve that manifest, to then send that order to the treasurer to cut the funds, release the funds, to pay the bills, is the process that we have to go through. So we always need a majority from commissioners signing off before we're allowed to pay one invoice.
Wow.
So in
It seems like
essence,
a pretty high level of detail for a commissioner.
it is part of the duties in the RSA, and I'd be happy to forward it along to you. And as I said, I think from entity to entity, it depends on how the process is done and to what level of detail each individual selectman or commissioner reviews and gets into the details of all the expenses and the approval process. But as I said, we go through a multi-level approval process on our own, just to make sure that, as I said, the services are done, the products are received as standard.
Well, and that's
accounts
great. I
payable
just don't want to
process.
rubber stamp that process. I'd rather it be authorized. I'm not sure about the RSA, but
No, I'm happy to send it along, but as it stands, we do, all municipal entities in New Hampshire, we have to have 3 of our board members, the majority, 3 out of our 5, sign off on the manifest before we're allowed to forward it to the treasurer, that she has your approval to issue payment on the invoices.
okay.
And just for clarity's sake, that audit is not an IRS audit. It is an accounting firm audit that we
I understand what
order.
an audit is, though.
Right.
Thanks.
Well, no,
I
but there's
get it.
different audits, obviously.
No, I know. That's exactly what I was referring to, and that's in my mind. That's the that's the check and balance right there.
We have a very thorough standard audit.
Mhm.
And actually, speaking of audit, I just spoke with our messaged with the auditors today. We'll be getting our draft for FY20 the week after Thanksgiving. So I'll turn that around to them a couple days. Then we have to, in line with that timing, send our final request to any legal expenses that or any legal firms that we've had expenses with through the audit and up to the date of finalizing the audit. So we just have to just have a response regarding any current matters that they need to know of before they do the final release on the audit. So that's the time frame there. It had been mentioned to me that there's some commissioners that don't have the FY19, the prior year audit, because that was when we had the bound copies that were distributed, but I have PDF copies and I'm happy to forward that to everyone.
No, I mean, just to be clear, my point is that, I feel the staff should be more empowered with those types of things like audits in place, rather than having myself sign off on it. Just doesn't feel like there's a lot of extra value in doing that, but also doesn't sound like there's a lot of choice. So is what it is, I guess.
I think it's part of the state requirements, basically. It's just a checks and balance thing, I guess, is the way I look at it.
Where it's public funds, they just add
Right.
that added layer. There are some approval processes that, we've been able to sort of do in stages. The way we do our weekly payroll, we do the in-house approvals so that we process the payroll each week, but give it to you at the end of the month to review, just to ensure that there's nothing that stands out to you as an issue to look into further. And I'll also be sending that, since we're doing everything online, I'll send that as a DocuSign. Also, when you can ask for further detail, I'll just send the front sheet of each payroll reconciliation.
Well, there's one downside of the COVID situation and not doing these reviews in our meetings like we normally do. I'm aware of multiple emails that get sent out to, for the accounts payable review. For example, these emails usually get sent out to each commissioner individually, right? To avoid a meeting. They're not being sent out to the group of commissioners. So I know that, excuse me, I know that I have been asking almost every month about certain expenditure lines, and I'm pretty sure Don has as well, but the other commissioners are not aware of that. So there's a little bit of a, blind spot that we commissioners have towards each other in regards to anybody asking any questions and to clarify any of these expenditure lines. We might want to find out if there's a way to avoid that. I think it would be very good for every commissioner to see that one of us is questioning the one or the other line item here and there. Not questioning, but wanting to see
asking for further detail, of course.
Right.
And if there are certain criteria we can set, I know that in the past when we first started doing the online, I started to get a sense of certain invoices that you would like the detail to. So I simply included it when I sent it out. So if there are certain, either, I'd always like to see this bill every single time, or all project bills. We can scan that and send that along so that it's then there for all of you. And I have been looking at if there's some way that, we could communicate to all commissioners that, this has been questioned and answered. Here's a little additional information. But if we start to have some exchange back and forth inadvertently, then we have the meeting issue. But I will pose
maybe if they get sent. Maybe if they get sent out, and then questions maybe, if they get sent out to all commissioners, if a commissioner is sending a question back, but that question is not being answered in that email chain, but coming from the administration, from staff, might be a discussion with Carrie, with our legal counsel to clarify if that's admissible or not.
Okay, and I can also run it by the Government Finance Officers Group, and also the Municipal Association, because they've been doing a lot of things about dealing with everything going remote and online. So I'll see if, I'm sure it's been something that's posed, so I'll see if they have any updates. So is there anyone that would like a PDF copy of the FY19 audit,
I don't
or
know.
is everyone's good? Okay.
I think I
I'm
have
all
mine.
set.
Yeah.
Okay. And as I said, well, it looks like the FY20 audit will wrap up. Will wrap up in December. And as we said, for the next year, we're going to try to get it even, maybe another, and shoot for a Thanksgiving audit and have it wrapped up by then. But I can also this week, I can get out to you. There's the budget numbers. There's how we did against budget, that and audit. Obviously audit contains that, but it adds in a lot of different layers and looking at our whole picture. But just as far as how our revenue expense results came out finally for FY20, I can get that out to you this week.
Okay, so we're good.
Okay, no other questions for me?
Doesn't look like it. Nope.
Okay.
Thanks, Michelle.
You're very welcome, thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to the regular session. Apologize, Kevin, for being behind. We had a little bit of a meeting go over before this meeting, but we'll try to make up some ground here, hopefully. The next on the agenda is Board of Commissioners to discuss the Herrick Street project with Kevin. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought that was your first name, Kevin. Jeff, Kevin, and Maureen Kelly of TF Moran. And who do we have here?
Yep. Hi, I'm Jeff Kevin with TF Moran's office. We're the civil engineer preparing the site plan. We're representing Ultimate Bimmer. They're proposing a car dealership. You want me to share my screen?
Yes, if we can make that happen somehow.
I'm gonna go with, he should be able to, because I think you're on as a presenter as well.
Pardon me?
You should be on as a presenter, so I think you should be able to do that.
Mine keeps coming up, host disabled, participant screen sharing.
We do have a figure in our packet.
Okay, so what's being proposed is a car dealership on the corner of the north corner of Herrick Street and Daniel Webster Highway. And I came in and met with
Be able to share without being host.
David Fredrickson.
Where is he?
And so right now there's a 6-inch water line at Herrick Street and King Street. That's where we had initially shown our water service coming from. That's about 200 north of our site. David informed me that the master plan for the water district is to extend an 8-inch line from there down to the corner of Herrick Street and Daniel Webster Highway, and that the self-storage facility that had been approved south of that, was supposed to bring that 8-inch up and connect the two systems to help boost that system. So if you're looking at it, King Street is up here about 200 feet from our site. This is the proposed car dealership. We were looking at coming down to the site and coming in and servicing it. So based on what David told me, we're supposed to tie into that 8-inch, which is on it's somewhat on our side of the street. It's in the pavement. But as we come across, we would propose to bring it off pavement and run along the edge of Herrick Street. And he said basically we would need to bring it down to this corner to try to allow for that future connection to that 8-inch system. So I've informed the client that's what we're being asked to do, and I guess what I asked David was, are there hookup fees or system fees or something that could be waived, since since the client would be investing in this extension, so that we could offset that cost in some way. And then I know during one meeting, the abutter across the street had talked about, a development on his site. And a separate question is there a way for this owner to be reimbursed if this abutter develops, say, within the next few years? Could that extension cost be offset or, mitigated in some way? So those are a couple of questions that we have for you. I understand exactly what we've been asked to do. And David outlined the specifications and where the line could be and so forth. And that's all very clear. The question is how we make it work financially.
Right. Those are good questions. I'm not sure we have an answer for you necessarily this evening.
If I may, Don?
Yeah, please.
Actually, if I may, Don. So part of our bylaws, if during the period of 7 years, immediately following the original construction as additional customers are connected to the end of the extension or laterally, a fee of $300 per foot, per unit, or for commercial, industrial, a fee of 30 cents per square foot shall be paid by the contractor to the Merrimack Village District in the same refund to the original petitioners, the sum total of which not to exceed the 75% of the total cost. Additional fees will go back to the Merrimack Village District. The above funds are non-transferable. So yes, you have up to 7 years. If another abutter ties into that, and then it would be broken out, and then that would go back to the original applicant.
Okay, great. And
That's a good point. That is online as well. It's our bylaws. So that would be
okay.
Under page 6 of 8, number 7, extensions to the present water main system, under H.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Welcome.
And do you have any impression for whether this project is moving forward? I guess I'm trying to find out what happens if we go in, extend the water line. Obviously, we need a certain flow and pressure. Fire department's talked about, a sprinkler system in the building. If this isn't connected, are we left with, having to do booster systems or something else, to make up for the available flow and pressure from the 6-inch line?
Have you done any fire flow tests down there now to this point? Have you requested any?
We haven't done any on the 6-inch. David just mentioned that he knew that the flow was relatively low, and that's the reasoning for the connection between the 8-inch, 6-inch system. So, I'm assuming you guys don't really have any idea for how quickly this will go ahead, or if it's going ahead, the project to the south?
I don't. No, I don't. I think it was over a year and a half ago, probably. I would guess that we met with that gentleman. So I don't know if that's moving forward at all.
Okay. All right. And so I'm assuming if we extend the line that we kind of have to deal with whatever flow or pressure is there. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I guess they would design to what's available. But I mean, I guess the first part would be a fire flow test just to
Yeah.
see what's available.
Yeah, I guess it would be more as much the pressure, again, for the fire suppression system. Water use in the building isn't going to be very high. It's, again, employees and what have you. So, okay.
Do you intend to put an irrigation system in on the site at all, or what's your plans for irrigation? Got some pretty good green space there.
What we typically recommend, if anything, like a temporary drip type system that would just, get everything established and then you don't use it, long term. So I'll have to find out more specifically, but that's typically what we recommend. That it isn't a sprinkler system that they just run, all through the summer. That it's really just watering enough to get the trees and shrubs established. We always use native type plantings anyway, so.
Okay.
But I'll get back to you on the exact answer.
Okay. All right, so I don't know if we've fully answered your question. I know Ron probably clarified the question about anybody along the line that comes back and wants to tie in. There is I guess I'll call it a rebate process there. I guess I would say as far as your fire flows, I don't know if running and connecting those two dead ends would improve the available flows to meet fire suppression flows. And if that's the case, I don't know what the cost difference would be. I know you mentioned something about putting in a booster pump for the building or something, but if that would be less costly than running the line all the way down to, what is it, Star Drive, it looks like. That's something
Yes.
you guys can evaluate, I guess.
Yeah, we'll have to, get a flow test. I don't know if you guys have flow test data out there, or if not, we would have to run one, and then we would just have to see what's needed for this system.
We can certainly look, and if we have it available, we will provide it. I don't know how old can data be for you? Does it matter how old it is, I guess, where I'm going to go with it?
If you have something, it'd be good to start with, and then I can talk to them as far as whether we just have one done to update it.
Okay.
All right. Well, I appreciate the information. I appreciate your time, and we'll keep you up to date as we move forward through the process.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Now, we didn't make you presenter on this, so when you leave, you're not going to shut the meeting down, right?
No.
Okay.
No, I'll stop sharing. Great.
All right, great.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
You want me to shut the meeting down?
No, you
No.
weren't.
I did it last week.
We'll let somebody
All
else
right,
do that this week.
In favor?
All right. Thanks again.
All right, great. So, so now we're on with Jamie Emery from Emery and Garrett. And you're going to talk about a couple things with us, Natticook Brook groundwater development and the salt mitigation project. So you can kind of take those at your own leisure.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me on, and I greatly apologize for last month's debacle. I didn't even know about it for a couple of days afterwards. So I will stop sharing after I'm done. But so the good news, I think, on the Natticook Brook Well 3, we Ron and his staff have done a great job putting together the road that gets to the well site. It looks like it's been completely prepared, or nearly completely prepared. Our contractor has gone out and looked at it and is very comfortable and feeling good about how we're moving along and getting that ready. His plan is to start setting up the week after Thanksgiving to begin the construction of that well. So that's that's a little bit ahead of schedule in terms of what I expected. You know, one of the hard part is we're actually working on the preliminary report, which is, for those that aren't familiar, the preliminary report is pretty substantial. It'll probably be about 25 or 30 pages. That'll be our document that goes to the DES. We're planning on submitting that probably the first week of December. I think it's about three quarters of the way been done. We're waiting on some information from various agencies that we're required to hear from. And I'm trying to think of the one that's most difficult is determining what wildlife or species might be present out there that would give us a problem. Anyways, that application is in. We're just waiting to hear back from them. So I think
Jamie,
that's.
you said you didn't submit that to the state yet, did you?
No. Yeah, no.
Right.
I'll give you a copy before we do.
Yeah, if you could, I was just going to ask you if it's in a
Yeah.
PDF format or something easily to email or download or something. I'd like to just take a quick peek at that.
Absolutely.
Are you planning on identifying piezometers and wetlands that we want to look at and everything too? in that
Yeah,
report?
we'll submit that and where the piezometers would go. The only
Okay.
thing that'll be different is because as we've changed the way we're doing this business now, not this meeting, but maybe next meeting or the week after, meeting after, we'll need to submit a change order for the pumping test, because the original pumping test was for a preliminary report, and we're going to skip that preliminary test and go straight to, if they allow us, straight to the long-term final pumping test environmental impact assessment. So we'll have to adjust it once we get comments back from the state. So
Okay.
I'll wait for that.
Do you have the well driller on schedule at this point? Is there a certain date, time that he's expecting to go?
Yeah, he's planning on coming out to start setting up the week after Thanksgiving.
All right, good.
So, yeah, so we're ahead of schedule on that in my view. You know, that's what he told me today, and that's what he told me last week. So I remain hopeful.
Right.
So, and we've got him. All the essential terms of the contract between us are pretty well set. That'll be wrapped up. He's somebody, is Barry Miller, so you know him.
Right.
He's very good, and he's one of the best in my view. So we're happy to have him. We're happy for him to be on site, and it'll be a good working environment. So.
And because he's good, he's in demand and he's very busy. So I know he's
Oh
a
my gosh.
tough guy to keep pinned down.
I have him working on 5 different projects myself. So
Wow.
Yeah, he's busy.
Okay.
So that's it for Natticook Brook, and I thought if I could, I'd spend a few minutes talking about tomorrow, which is a big deal. Tomorrow we're doing the salt mitigation discussion. It's been a really positive so far. I'm really encouraged by a lot of things. One, thank you, Don, for putting together the cover letter that went out as the invite. I think that was really good. Don worked on it during his recovery from his knee surgery, which was
I had nothing
nice.
else to do.
But I think it was important to have that, come from the board, and together we were able to get something out. And then I think Jill and Ron have done an outstanding job getting out to the local folks to get people committed. Jill did a really good job on getting this doodle poll so we could get the speakers. We've asked the state to speak. So we got the #1 speaker. Ted Deers is the head administrator of the Watershed Management Bureau for DES. He's the guy. So I think that was a really good, he's been very good. He and I have been working together on this presentation. And then Pierce Rigrod is also going to be involved for question and answers from the DES on salt mitigation. Jill got out we were able to coordinate the speakers, which was good, for Tuesday, tomorrow at 3 o'clock. And then Ron and Jill have been calling all of the salt users, the property owners, the the folks who manage the parking lots. And we've got a really, I think, good representation. We didn't get everybody we wanted, but we've got I think, a really good group, and also the town, Kyle Fox and his group from DPW will be attending. So I think that's all positive. And I got a call today from one of the contractors who does a lot of the snow removal along Continental Boulevard. And he is so excited about this meeting. He thinks that it's fantastic that people are starting to talk about brine. He's actually taken his whole company away from salt, moving towards brine use. He'll be a part of the discussion tomorrow. He's got 100 questions to ask the state, or he's got several. So I think it's going to be good in terms of how this moves forward. And it may be the first of a couple, but it seems that these folks are really, Fidelity will be there. So they've got some of their senior people coming, I understand. So it will be recorded both by Zoom and by the town, so it can be used in the future. So I think it's something we can probably use over and over again, or at least a couple times. And I know there's some people who said they can't make it that are interested in following up afterwards. So it is at 3 o'clock tomorrow. We've got a little bit to work through, and ultimately I think I'm pretty encouraged. So I don't know if you guys have any questions, but
I'd like to just echo your thoughts too about thanking everybody for the effort on this, yourself as well as Ron and Jill. I know, it's a lot of work to call all these individual property owners, and it's something that's extremely important to get the message out and have people participate. So I'm glad that we made this very good progress that we made in a short amount of time here. So I appreciate that effort. And, I think it's important to get these companies on board as a good gesture to the environment, to the community. And, it's a voluntary thing at this point. Some of them might be required to, minimize salt usage, but some of them are grandfathered. But I think everybody is in the same boat. We're all using the water, and, as much as everybody can do their own part to make that better quality and improve the salt issues in our wells, as a voluntary measure. And, obviously, if that's not sufficient, I think we need to start looking at potentially looking at bylaws and all that. And, and I'll mention that tomorrow is, we're trying to keep this loose right now as a voluntary thing mostly. And hopefully that'll work. It sounds like it was successful back in 2012 when it was last, focused on. So that would be the goal. And, maybe over the next year or two, if that's not enough, we got to either resurrect this thing as almost an annual event or maybe every few years. But hopefully we'll see a turnaround in our salt levels in our wells. And if that's not enough, then, we got to think about doing something a little more drastic, going by the potentially pursuing a bylaw. And I'm not sure really what the ins and outs of that are, but hopefully we don't need to go that route, so.
I think you will hear a couple of ideas tomorrow from the contractors, and certainly from DPW. And I agree with you. I hope we don't have to go that route, but it's certainly it's within the realm of reasonableness and possibility. So, right. No, I think that's good. And I think, Don, you're going to attend tomorrow. Is that correct?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So the way this is going to work, the way we've set it up right now is that I would speak first on where we stand within Merrimack. Well, some of it will be a review of what I've done before, and then Ted will come in and what can be done, and then we'll have that questions and answers. I'm really focusing on trying to get a culture change, that we are trying to preach and promote a culture change in salt use within these wellhead protection areas. And that culture change really requires a couple champions. Those people that are in the contractor business, and I think this Sean O'Keefe is someone who, based on my conversation today, would be a champion. I mean, he just believes that brine is the way to go. He's changed his company's profile. He said, I don't want to ever step on salt anymore. It's not cost effective. It's expensive to start in it, but in the long run, I mean, he was just all in. So, I mean, those are the kinds of people we need. And I think Fidelity, I think there's some things that are happening that are very positive from their end and their support. So I expect that we'll see some support from Fidelity as well. So
Great.
that'll be a big, big plus. So
Good.
so wish us
Looking
luck
forward to it.
tomorrow, and hopefully it'll go well.
All right, looking forward to it. Any other commissioners can free up some time, feel free to drop in, or if not, catch the replay on it. I think Merrimack TV, did that get confirmed, Jill, if they're able to record this tomorrow?
Yep, they'll be recording.
Oh, beautiful. Awesome. So I assume that's going to be rolling on the YouTube channel and probably channel 20 or something, if we can get them to play it there too.
It's not going to be live, it'll be recorded, but
Yeah.
but the Zoom meeting itself, we're recording through Zoom, and Amy and I tested it out today, and once you log off the meeting, there's like a little box that pops up and asks if you want to save a copy of the recorded meeting. So anybody that's on the meeting can also save that, but then we'll post that onto the website too.
And that's good, because I think, you might not have the people who are actually applying the de-icing compounds to the ground in the meeting necessarily, and that can get disseminated to the people who, it's going to be a permanent record for every property owner to pass along every time staff changes or management companies change, that, this is something we can remind them that they have and say, listen, get familiar with this. This is the practice that we all, were made aware of and hopefully agree to. And it's something that can live on beyond just tomorrow's meeting, which I think is a great thing. So that's really that's what the benefit of this is all about, is to have a record that's there for future as well. So I really appreciate everybody and the effort that was put into this, and I look forward to tomorrow.
We'll hope it goes without a hitch.
I'm with you.
All right.
Thanks, Jamie. Anything
Okay, well,
else? Anything else with Jamie? Oh, before you leave, there was. I just wanted to run through real quick if there were any action items. We have a list of action items that we put together, and I'll just look really quick to see if there was anything in there, possibly for Jamie on here at all.
Nope, just one, number 18.
Number 18. Yeah, I guess you just did it. Jamie Emery to get a date for New Hampshire DES to be a participant in the Zoom meeting with all landowners in the wellhead protection areas about salt application. So it looks like you've got that covered. So we'll remember to cross that off the do list. So that's good.
Good.
It's always better to put more of these things, cross them off instead of putting more on. So that's a positive thing.
I'm happy to cross something off.
Yeah, right.
All right. Well,
All right.
thank
We
you.
appreciate it, Jamie. Thanks. See you tomorrow.
Have a good evening. Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Great. He almost put us right back on the time schedule too. So that's awesome. So next on the agenda, we've got capital projects with Underwood Engineers. So who do we got here? Peter, are you going to start this off?
Yep, I'll start it off and then Keith will jump in. I think Keith's there. There he is. Yep.
Yep, there he is.
Okay.
Great.
Hey, so I'll start off with the well 4 and 5 project. So that's been operating for a little over a month now. And still some punch list items that the contractor's working through on those. Hope to have that done soon. And the change order amount was about 1.5% of the contract. So there's one small item left. So once we get that, we'll have a final number, but we're going to be about 1.5%. So that came out pretty good. So that one's moving along nicely. Any questions on that before I jump to 7-8?
No, any of the things that are still being worked on the punch list, are they problematic, or it's just a matter of getting through them?
Yeah, just getting through them. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. On 7-8, contractors continuing to work out there. The site subcontractor has removed most of the fill from the back of the building, and rough graded that, and has also rough graded the infiltration basin. So most of the material that they do not need has been moved off site, and the masons are starting to do their work. So they're starting to get the block up. So that's nice. The modifications at the well 7 building are continuing. So they're doing that. They're setting up a temporary caustic system right now to make sure that that's operational, and then they can demolish all the lime stuff and then construct a new caustic system there. So that's moving along well. So and that would be nice that we get that caustic system up and running, so the operators can be, I want to, adjusting things, playing around with it and stuff like that during the winter months, and feel comfortable with the new chemical, from those wells, prior to the green sand treatment. So they can do that this winter and be ready for the spring. So that's working out nice. The one thing that the contractor did say at the meeting on Thursday is he thinks that due to the date of the vessel delivery, that his schedule is going to be pushed out. So instead of being the beginning of August, he's thinking about the middle of September. So we're talking with him right now and finding out exactly what he needs. And he says that it's mainly due to when the vessels are going to be delivered, and then the amount of work that has to be done after the vessels get delivered. So it's not work that he can do. So once the vessels get delivered, then he can put the roof on, then he can put, set up his staging inside, so he can set up the ceiling, or construct the ceiling. Then he has to, set up staging to put the new board on the wall of the existing building and that type of thing. So just then the electrical work and all that stuff that can't be done when the building is wide open. So, so we're working with them on trying to refine that. He says at this point right now, a lot of it's a guess, because he doesn't, it's hard to look into the crystal ball that far out in the future, but just wanted to give you a heads up on that one. And I can probably, give you more of an update next month.
Okay.
Okay.
So these wells are going to continue to be online, right? 7 and 8 through this whole process?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So.
Except for maybe a short period at the end or something at all?
Yeah, because the green sand is going to be operational. So it's, we can be running the green sand pumping into the system just like it is right now. Right. And then we can switch over and start running it through PFAS. So it's, once we get the PFAS system operational, it's just, open a valve and send the water a different way.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay, good.
But yeah, there'll be a very short, time that it would be down.
Right.
Yeah.
Pete,
Ken?
Yep, Ken.
Just curious, when is the vessel supposed to be delivered? When they projected?
Yeah, so the shop drawing hasn't been approved, so that came back to us. We sent it back to Wes, and what we did on the 4-5 project, we worked with Evoqua and asked for additional material or information that we could attach to the back of the shop drawing. So when we sent the shop drawing back, it was a furnish as corrected instead of a revise and resubmit. I talked to Wes about doing that. He thinks it might be too complicated to do that. So we're supposed to be having a phone call this week with ourselves and the contractor and Evoqua and talk about our comments and how easy is it to address those in the shop drawing. So one of the things we were talking about is, can we approve a portion of it? Like, can we release the vessels themselves and then have that get into production? Because that's a big thing, then we can work on some other things. So like one of the comments we had was the pipe rack, instead of being the pipe rack at 4 or 5 is an 8-inch pipe, and then they moved to 12-inch pipe. We think they could, just go to 10-inch pipe, because a 12-inch pipe, puts the valves too high off the ground for operators to be, operating, so we want them to do some redesign on that type of thing. So we're hoping that we can get the vessels released early, and then we can work on all the other stuff in a subsequent, so we'll split up that shop drawing maybe into 2. That's just a thought, but once we talk this week, we'll have a better idea. And then once the shop drawing is approved, then they give you a firm date or as firm as they can give you their guesstimate of when you're going to get delivered. So.
Well, it sounds like that's the critical path, so definitely appreciate if you can focus on that and get that moving along.
Yeah, so right now, they originally were saying the end of March. Well, that was when they were anticipating it. So we'll find out once we get all the approvals and all that, and we'll get a date. So we should have that next month. We should have an update on that and, what Evoque was telling us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions on well 7 and 8? Okay, move along.
Okay. And then the well 2 project. So we're on schedule with that one. We submitted that to both the district and to DES last week. And we're looking to, get review comments back by Thanksgiving. I talked to Ron about, meeting with him, hopefully right before Thanksgiving, and we can sit down and talk about any comments that the district may have, and then we can get comments from DES. Then we can, get that information back to our sub-consultants with the goal of submitting 100% on January 8th. And because we had we're sending this 90% submittal in, I'm hoping that there'll be very few comments coming back on the 100% once we submit those, so we can get the approval fairly quickly, and we'll hopefully schedule has us out to bid around I think January 24th we had, with February 24th bid opening. So that still lines us up nicely for start of construction right around the 1st of April.
And again, the carbon capacity on that was 12, no, what was how many gallons per minute?
2,000.
2,000, that's right.
Yeah. So it's 2 trains, and we based that off of what Emery and Garrett was saying about the capacity aquifer, and they're saying that the aquifer had a 2,000 gallon per minute capacity.
Right.
Yeah.
Assuming that new well pans out along with well 2, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what ended up being the resolution on the electrical service options on
the
that?
electrical? So when we were talking with the electrical engineer, initially we were talking about carrying the electrical feed into the treatment plant building, and then having a line going from there down to well number 2. And at well number 2, we would have the VFDs for both well number 2 and what we're calling well number 9.
Yeah.
Which is a new well.
Yeah.
And so based on that, he was saying that he's only allowed to have a 3% voltage drop from the building, between buildings. And then he also has to run out to well number 9. So the total voltage drop from the treatment plant out to well number 9 can't be more than 5%. So by doing that, he had to put in very large cables. So he was putting in 2 sets of 500 MCM cable, which those cables are like 5/8 of an inch, in diameter, and so each set is 4 wires, because you got 3 phase with the ground. So he's running 8 of those wires from the treatment plant down to, well number 2, and then he had to carry probably a couple pair out to well number 9, because you couldn't have that much of a voltage drop. So he says it doesn't make sense to to have that much, cable in the ground. He says it makes more sense to have the electrical feed going down to well number 2 and then having a small set of wires coming up. So we would still have to put a conduit bank in from the treatment plant down to the well, but it's going to be much smaller wires coming back up. So the only real, cost increase on that is to carry the gas feed, because you would need to locate the generator down there too. So then it would just be the increase of the gas line running down there. So it really made sense to put everything down there. So the only problem is that, the VFDs on that are very large. So what we're planning on doing, trying to keep that facility operational. So as you walk in the door, on the wall, just as you immediately walk in, is where you have the electrical feeds coming in, and you have your VFD on that wall. What we are going to do is, as you walk in on the left-hand side, we had put the new electrical service entrance in there, so you can get that all wired up. On the wall to the far right, we would temporarily relocate the RTU there and put the new VFD on that wall. So then we can get the new electrical feed and VFD all wired up, and then we can make, once that system's all operational, then we could just make a connection up to the new well once that well gets, pulled and the new pump, put into it and cleaned and stuff. So we, at that same time it's being shut down, we can get all that started up. And then once the new electrical system started up, then we'll demo the old electrical, wall right there with the service entrance. And we'll put the VFD there for number 9 on that wall.
Okay.
So we'd have everything sort of in that, in that building, and do it so we keep everything functioning.
So is the water line from the new well 9 going to go directly to the treatment plant building, I would assume?
We actually had it tying in into the line, just so we have, as you come out of well 2, it goes up, and then you have a hydrant branch, for a blow off hydrant right next to the pump station.
Yeah.
So we would come in and tie in after that. So if you wanted to, if you're doing work on well number 2 and you want to continue operating well number 9, then you can do that. And then you can, have a blow off hydrant there. You could run it all the way up. I don't think you really need to run it all the way up there. You get a nice 12-inch pipe there that you can,
that'll handle 2,000 gallons a minute.
Yeah, that's the same pipe that you have going right out and right up Berry Lane and stuff.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to meter, each well is going to have a separate meter, so you can track the usage on each well.
Yeah, so you would have the meter in the build well 2, and then it would be a meter pit outside for well number 9.
All right, that's what I was going to ask you, if you have to build a building out there at well 9, or if it's just can be a meter pit or something.
Yeah, so we'd have the meter pit, so we'd have the actual meter there, but then we'd run the controls inside. So
Right.
Operators need to be looking at something, they would have that. And obviously, so we're having the meter down in the pit, we'd have to put a sump in there and all that kind of stuff, high water alarm and that type of thing. But
Yeah.
it's not that bad. It's right next to the building.
Talking about a confined space, Peter? I don't know what a meter pit is.
Yeah, this is pretty much like a manhole type of thing. It would probably be like I'm guessing like a 5-foot diameter structure. So it is a confined space, yeah.
We all set up for that, Ron?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't think we wouldn't necessarily need to act it frequently, I'm guessing, if
No.
the readout, if the meter readout is in either at the treatment plant or at well 2 building or something.
It would be at well 2, yeah.
And that would actually be viewable on the SCADA system as well, like
Yep.
our other wells are?
Exactly,
Okay.
yep.
We'd probably access it probably yearly, your calibrations, that kind of stuff.
Right.
But other than that, probably not.
Okay.
Yeah, then if a sump pump goes, then it would have to get into it, replace the sump pump, that type of thing, yeah.
So the meter pit would probably be out near well 9, I would guess.
Nope, we're gonna put it right, we put it right next to well 2 as it comes in from the woods
Oh,
there.
it would, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
We want to keep those lines as short as possible at the flow meter coming into the building.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say you could probably put a gravity drain or something, so you wouldn't rely on a sump pump.
We can certainly look how that works with gravity. The only problem is if you run that out to a wetlands and you have it by gravity and all of a sudden you get high water in your wetlands,
Yeah.
and it backs right up into your,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So-
I'll leave
And
that
then,
up to you.
And then we're actually tomorrow we're going out there. I have this coworker Jordan that runs our GPS unit, and we're going to actually go out there and locate, because Ron and his crew put a new road out towards where well number 9 is going to be drilled. So we're actually going to go out there and GPS that road onto our plan, and then locate. They have a monitoring well out there. And then wherever they decide to put the production well, we can kind of take ties off of that, and then we'll shoot some of the large trees along there so we can create a base map for that work out there.
Good.
And in conjunction because remember we did the survey along that whole route.
Right.
So we have that base map for that, and then we're gonna now just put in the road on there. So
And we're on the same side of the brook, so we don't need to do any directional drilling or anything with this proposal.
we do. There is a brook right.
That's true. There's another brook that runs.
Right at the very beginning, right next to the pump station, is a brook there. So we are thinking about doing directional, and it might be easier just directional drilling right out there, because you can keep because if you're thinking about how wide an operation is going to be. So you figure, your trenching operation, with your size of your equipment, you're probably about 10 feet wide. Then you're casting the material off to the side, which is, going to be 8 to 10 feet wide. Then you have to have a loader bringing material in on the other side that's like 10 feet wide. So you have sort of a 30-foot wide swath going through there that you would have to clear. And I don't know if you really want to have the looks of a 30-foot swath going through there. I think with directional drilling, you can, keep that as a, narrow path. But, once we figure out what the route's going to be, if that's going to be going too close to some of the large trees, we could just have the contractor that's, clearing the lot for the treatment plant go out there and pick a few more trees out of there and, get rid of them. So.
Okay.
At least that's what we are thinking right now, is doing directional drilling, but we want to talk to Ron and find out how he feels about that and that type of thing. So.
All right, sounds good. Anybody have any other questions on the well 2 project? If not, I guess you can move on.
Hi, guys. I was going to give you an update on the Turkey Hill booster.
Okay.
I think that's next on the agenda.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, Tim Poles gave Peter and I an update. There's still work going on, and the site work and the paving is supposed to be taking place this month in November. Should be by or around Thanksgiving time that the paving will be done. There is some electrical work still left to do. One thing that did happen is it turned out we had to do some conduit replacement up to the tank. So there was a change order adjustment to accommodate for that. The original thought was that we could use the conduit and pull new wires through it, but they were plugged. So we end up having to replace them. So there's new conduits going in, and that's going to happen in November as well.
What was the change order amount on that? Do you have
it was significant. It was about $76,000 for all of that, because it went all the way back up to the tank.
Yeah.
So I remember in design, there was some talk about whether or not we needed to do it. The hope was we didn't. Ended up having to do it. It does fit within the budget and the contingency. We still have, we're still $100,000 under budget overall on that project, even with that change order. So it was unfortunate, but that's
okay.
that's what happened to have to happen. So with that added a little bit of time too, and so they're looking to start the station up in early to mid-January.
That's all new wiring too as well, Don.
Okay, good.
Everything's gonna be new going up. There's not gonna be any old mixed in with it. So,
Good. All right, any other questions on the Turkey Hill booster from anyone? If not, and you want to move along, that's
quick
all you have
question.
on that, Keith, for Turkey Hill?
Quick question for me.
Oh, sorry, Wolf, go ahead.
Sorry. So I was there the other day, and it's still very hard to get in and out and park. With the pavement that we plan to do there, do we plan to improve that?
There's some improvements going on, and again, I'd have to defer back to Tim, or maybe Ron, you can speak to that better than I can, because I'm just getting the update from Tim, but
I wasn't sure. I know there was some of the grading that was done is a little bit more convenient than it used to be from a parking standpoint, but I wasn't sure with dismantling the old booster station if there could be, if we could maybe make more room for 1 or 2 cars down at the bottom of the hill, so we don't block the access road to the tank itself, right? And also not have to back out into the street and maybe turn around on the property.
okay. I'd have to go back to Tim on what it was that was being accommodated there, but Ron might have some thoughts. Yeah.
So there was a turnaround or a parking area next to the booster itself. With the electrical crossing through and some of the work that needed to be done, we didn't actually think, so it wouldn't have been able to get paved this year to have that parking lot. And I didn't think it was going to be used, Dave, as well. Didn't think we would use it up that close. More likely, we're just going to be pulling up, jumping out, and going into the building. But I can look into doing something down at the bottom of down near the road.
I just noted because it's right around the bend, right, and then you have that drop coming from the town side, right? It's people flying around that corner and down that drop. It's something. If you pull into the property alongside of the booster station, you have to back out, right? And that's not a fun thing to do. You can't really turn around unless you pull past, maybe, right, and turn around up on up the on the top end of the booster station. But I figured since the old station is going to be leveled, right, we should be gaining a little bit of space at the bottom of the hill, right next to the road. And if we gravel that and spread it out, level it out a little bit, we should be able to have a little bit more space.
The only thing that I'm thinking more down towards the shoulder, we might be able to do something,
right,
to give a pull, an area to back up where you're still off the road. We don't carry the curb, so where our tank overflows at the top. It's meant to come down the road and down into the swale. So you're going to have a 6-8 inch curb on both sides, similar to what's there now. I think it's probably a 6-inch curb, so it might be a little bit hard. I mean, we jump the curb now in our trucks and park up on the lawn, but a car or something like that may not be able to do that. But down at the bottom, I think that might be the place to do it in that swale area or in that shoulder.
It's just a thought. I just noticed when I stopped by there, it was not fun to pull back out of there. I actually parked alongside of the road, so it wasn't so hard for me. But when I figured that we go there, for maintenance purposes and monitoring purposes, on a frequent basis, it would be good to do something that allows us to pull back out of it safely without having to back up into the road.
I'll make a note, Wolf, to share that with Tim, and Tim can close the loop with you, Ron, see what we can do to make some adjustments where possible.
Okay.
Good point.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think, Ron, what you were referring to is the curb kind of needs to stay in place.
It does.
Because the water that comes, if the tank overflows, it's obvious down at the bottom of the hill by keeping that water inside the curb line, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's made to sheet down that hill.
Right. All right, good point. Okay, I guess the next thing on the agenda was the master plan update.
Yep, the next two I had was the master plan update and the corrosion control. And if you don't mind, I may just take those out of order because the corrosion control is real brief, and then we may want to chat a little bit more if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah, and the corrosion control, I was just gonna, we've started, we've done the site visit or a site visit. We're still collecting data. So things are moving faster on that one. And just a reminder that the goals for that is to update the target parameters for operating pH, alkalinity, and so forth, because it's been such a long time since they were operating. And now that we've got the new treatment plant on and the other one's pending, it's going to sort of be a first target draft. And I think we'll see as the other plants come on, we'll have to make any adjustments then. We'll make some adjustments then. And then the other part of that that's sort of being wrapped into this now is the potential or the impacts if and when we change our use or when we use the emergency connections we have with Pennachuck and Manchester as well. So that's ramping up and in progress.
Okay. Any questions on that from anyone?
Yeah,
I do.
sure.
Wolf's got a
Sorry.
question for you.
Sorry, I'll keep it quick.
That's all right.
So, I heard you say pH control, but I haven't heard you say chlorination.
Well,
that was a big part of that, at least what I thought was a big part of it. We have complaints repeatedly from ratepayers or users that our chlorination levels are very, very high, to the point that they refuse to use the water, right, or drink the water, or at least have to add a house filtration system. And our argument is always that we have the deterioration of the chlorination, right, within the distribution system. So to maintain a certain level of chlorination at the far end of the distribution system, we have to have a high level of chlorination at the beginning end where we feed into the system. One of the things that I'd hope for is that we come up with ideas on how to maybe level out the chlorination in the system in general, or come up with a way to chlorinate that we don't have that level of decay in the system.
All right. Yeah, I do remember that now, Wolf. And when we talk corrosion control, we're really certainly focusing around the lead and copper, because that's the compliance things. But I do recall that, so I will make sure that it probably is in the scope as we discussed. But I'll remind those guys that that's something we want to.
I think it is. I agree.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
We met with Tom and
Megan.
Last week, and I did mention that to Tom. So if Tom's writing up the scope, that
he knows then. He knows, and he will do that. Yep. But I'll make sure to remind them.
Right, and part of it is that there is, and I don't have that off the cuff here as a precise comment, but my understanding is maybe you water engineers have it readily available. My understanding is that the decaying products from that chlorination actually have some adverse health effects as well, not just from a bacterial level, but the decay products, the byproducts of that decay, also have some.
Yeah, it's more of a reaction with your organic matter as much as it is a decay, and it's kicks in the disinfection byproducts rule. So it is something you pay attention to. It's less of a concern in groundwater systems because the organics are so low. But it is something that you do want to pay attention to, and that's why we worry a little bit about chlorine. You want to have the right balance. So
right.
I don't think there's been an issue with you guys with disinfection byproducts, but that is correct. Well, you're correct, and it's usually something less concerning with groundwater. But we'll make sure to have that. They didn't mention it in my updates, their update they gave me, but if Ron talked to them, it's in the scope, it'll get done.
Okay, cool.
Could I add one thing to that?
Sure.
And Ron, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe once we put 4-5 online, which is up in the northern end of the system, they were able to reduce the chlorine concentration coming out of the other wells because they did not have to push it as far. Because once 4-5's online, then it's really feeding the northern system. So they were able to bump down the chlorine residuals a little bit. So I'm not sure how far they got down. But I,
That wasn't 4 and 5, that was the injection amount.
Yeah, we're down to about a 0.8 that we're injecting at 4 and
Yeah.
5.
That could
At
be,
4 and 5.
that could be because the going through the carbon probably removes organics and stuff, so there's probably less chlorine decay, I think, coming out of the 4 and 5 wells now, right?
well, the chlorine's after the after the GAC. So yeah, but it was but the residual doesn't have anything to do with the organics. That's the disinfection byproducts that are the organics cause. So
So
that
when we started up 4 and 5, we have settings at other stations that we're putting in one part out into the system. Because we raised it when 4 and 5 was off to get it further. We started 4 and 5 up, pumping out 1. So we've since lowered it to try to get that down. Like I said, we're down now to a 0.8. We may be able to bring it down even some more, but that was my memory from what we used to run our other wells at. So we're starting to bring them down. And with that being said, we're bringing them down, but we're also monitoring out in the system to make sure we're still getting the 0.2, out in the furthest points of our system as well. We don't want to, ideally you want to be a little bit higher than that, but that's what you're required at your furthest point. So it's a little check and balance. We're going out looking at levels, and we're working down when we can in the station. So
Okay.
so you have seen a little bit of a benefit just by having 4 or 5 come online.
oh, absolutely, yeah.
What scope of work, I don't know if it was this corrosion control, but at some point, did we ask you to look at the evaluation of switching the whole system to chloramines instead of chlorine? I remember talking about that, but I can't remember if that.
That was part of this scope too, wasn't it?
I
Yeah,
think, I don't have that one in front of me, Wolf or Don, so I'd have to go back and double check, but I do know the chloramine conversion discussion will definitely come up in the master plan update too, as we look at Manchester as an option.
Okay.
But I'd have to double check to see where we carried that.
I think that was in the master plan.
I thought it was part of the erosion plan too, because we had talked about that the chloramine possibly allows us to reduce the gradient of the concentration is more stable within the system. It's not as like the decay is not as, or the rate of decay is not as steep, right, from as the water travels through the system. So the original level could be lower in the first place. And I'm pretty sure I recall bringing that up in the discussion about the scope of that corrosion study.
Well, it's definitely, yeah, so there was the option of looking at if we use Manchester water, it's definitely in that scope. Converting all secondary disinfectants in the MVD system to chloramines. So it's in what we're referring to as ESR 54.
Mm-hmm.
It was related to the use of Manchester water, but indirectly as a result of that scope, if we look at that option, which is in the scope, you're right, it's in the ESR 54, which is has to do more with the master plan update. We'd have to look at the impact system wide on that. So it's in there, so it will be addressed.
Because another one that I recall bringing up was, is there a way for us to decentralize the chlorination of the system? To not just look at the wells, but would there be a way for us to rechlorinate basically further out somewhere in the system, so we don't have to have the levels as high at some of the source points in the system?
Well, that is one of the advantages of chloramines. I mean, as your point is, you don't have the disinfection product issues, but what you have is a lower residual that is maintained. It sticks around longer. It has less disinfecting properties versus chlorine, which has higher disinfecting properties, but has a shorter life. It decays quicker. I mean, so it's sort of the two options you have. Manchester uses chloramines, and we're able to send it all the way to Salem before they have to add chemical feed again. So, yeah, although that's not working well, we're looking at intermediate chemical feed systems now, probably in Londonderry. But But the idea is exactly right. I mean, Massachusetts Water Resource Authority uses chloramines for that reason, because they can decentralize and not have as many chemical feed facilities. You still need them. So there will be some discussion on the advantages of that. Whether it plays out to be something that really makes sense, I mean, I guess we'll come to see. But your neighbor Manchester uses it. Pennachuck doesn't.
Do we know if Pennachuck has ever looked at possibly switching over?
I don't know. I'd
John,
have to ask him.
John, you have a good wire down to Pennachuck, right?
Yeah, I haven't heard that discussed at Pennachuck before, to be honest with you. And I guess if I was gonna throw something in there, but talked about having additional chlorine injection ports. I mean, would that be a more cost-effective alternative to putting a few stations throughout the system as opposed to switching the whole thing over?
Also not
Yeah,
bad.
it's an option. And I think what'll come out of this study or this report is, I mean, is maybe an introduction to, yeah, this is worth a harder look. I mean, I think this will sort of be a first cut, at least to what we think might make sense. And there may be some more. If it seems to have some wheels, it's probably going to take a little bit more to look at.
That was a really nice way to say that's out of scope.
Yeah, I can't get anything by you, Wolf. I can't get anything by you. But
It was perfect. I have to remember that one. That was great. And it's fair too. It's fair.
You know, I learned that in school because they always said, you know, not only do you have to, in engineering school, you have to write your report and always make recommendations for further looks. But no, the reality of it is, as I'm reading the scope, it was really more in the context of what we thought would be a, you know, wider spread use of Manchester water. But I'll double check, you know, and we'll get you what you need, and we're gonna make sure it's something we look at to vet it out properly.
I think Ron brought up a good point too. I mean, when they put 4 and 5 back online, if he's putting it in there at a 0.8, that sounds pretty low to me, or reasonable at least.
Yeah,
I
it's
wonder
reasonable.
if the folks you're talking to, Wolf, may have noticed a change with that happening recently.
Yeah, it was a surge of posts on, again, I'm the unofficial PR officer of the MVD, so you know, people are sometimes tagging me and it was certainly a surge of comments that the chlorine was especially bad about 3 weeks prior to that post, and that was just about the same time that we started running 4 and 5 during daytime. So, but I think staff has addressed it and very timely that same weekend. So,
Have you had any seen any posts recently, or is it
no, not since. I just know it's a general complaint. You know, whenever somebody says, you know, do you guys smell chlorine in the water, and it's usually an influx of people left and right that say yes, we do. So, and it's usually regional. I mean, it's noticeably when you ask people where they live, it's usually, you know, within a certain area, which is probably similar to you know, and correlated to our well location. So, because we don't chlorinate at the tanks, right? We chlorinate at the wells.
correct?
Well, right now, Hampstead Area Water Company down in Hampstead and Atkinson is converting from chlorine to chloramines. They're struggling with it, but they're trying. And Exeter recently did it three years ago, I think, plus or minus.
The only problem with Pennachuck, if they decided to do that, you know, any community that they are serving, they also have to be changing over too. So like they're serving Milford, so Milford has their Curtis wells and all that kind of stuff that they use in chlorine. So then, you know, Milford, you know, I don't know what's written in their contract, you know, so, but if Pennachuck decides to change, you know, Milford's almost forced to, but, you know, I don't know what the contract says, and I don't know what other communities that Pennachuck has. I know they're feeding Hudson too, but I don't think Hudson has any wells. I think Pennachuck feeds 100%. Is that true, Keith? Do you know?
I think Hudson is has some of their own source, but
Yeah, but so whatever, you know, whatever they have, you know, for communities and stuff like that. So
So a lot of their communities rechlorinate Pennachuck's water as well.
well, I imagine everybody that Pennachuck is hooked up to, they are doing chlorine because you can't mix them.
Right, but I didn't know that they actually had, I thought the residual and Pennachuck system was enough to get out to the extremes of Milford and
Yeah, I'm
Hudson.
not sure, Ron, does Milford have a booster injection station at the town line?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, I know they have a meter pit there, but I don't know, I didn't know if there was a chlorine, because there's no building right there, at the town line, so.
But I would imagine Milford's putting chlorine into the water at their wells like we
Yeah,
are.
right.
So maybe it's enough to offset if they're losing that residual from Pennachuck. I don't.
Yeah, and those Curtis wells are right on, Nashua Street, so it's not too far from the, Amherst border where it comes in, that they could be blending it right there, so.
I mean, we also have to recognize the obvious that, our connection to Pennachuck, if we decide to go to chloramines, then we have issues using that emergency connection from Pennachuck. So we would have to make sure we have an alternate connection from Manchester instead of Pennachuck to rely on for emergency purposes. It's unfortunate everybody can't be on the same disinfectant, but that's the way it is what it is. So.
Well, you don't have to rule those connections out. It just adds another challenge. I mean, if you use chloraminated water, you can convert it back to chlorine. I mean, so there's things you can do.
Yeah.
It's just one more step.
Yeah.
Make it useful. But yeah, no, it's a point that you have to address it if you're going to do that. Right now, you got one of each on both sides of you, and you have a connection to both. So.
Right. So the Manchester connection now only works if we isolate a portion of our distribution system, right? Because we need to build a pump station over there if we wanted to pressurize our entire distribution system, from what I've been led to believe.
That's
Yes.
correct.
Right. Okay.
And the
All
way
right.
you've been getting around the chloraminated situation, I think, is by isolating it. You're converting a portion of your system to chloramines for a short time.
Right. And I think we are even flushing out the chlorinated water and bringing in
Yeah.
the chloramines.
Chloraminated water. Yeah.
Chloraminated water, if that's even a word.
Yep. Yep.
All right. Well, I think we digress, but this is good information for everybody to keep. The more we talk about it, the more it stays fresher in our memory. And so there is a utility in getting into the weeds like this, I think. But so if anyone else has any other questions, bring them up now. Otherwise, I think we can move on to the master plan update itself.
Well, okay, I'll jump in then. That last discussion sort of plays well into what the master plan is trying to do, the
Right.
master plan update is trying to do, because we're looking at all these source options and looking at the plus and minuses, not just from a cost advantage, but also a water quality advantage and reliability advantage. There's really those three things. So I wanted to just take a moment to sort of update you on these things, because they will, these will play right into those decisions. And we're progressing with this work. We're looking at, with this project, we're looking at 5 sources or 5 ways to bring back some additional water supply. And the idea is we're going to identify a replacement to well number 3, but also the supplemental source we need. Now, we'll talk about conservation in a minute, but these are all the sources that we think will provide you the additional supply needs you need, and maybe more if you want it. And then we can decide on which ones to pursue to get us to the point that we get the adequate supply we need. The ones that we're looking at are artificial recharge, well number 3, artificial recharge at 4.5, well number 3 replacement. We just talked about that. Mitchell Woods, Pennachuck connection, and there's 2 parts to that: sort of maintain what we have or upgrade it to a wholesale, permanent, reliable connection. And then we have Manchester Waterworks, same thing, maintain that to sort of what we have as an emergency connection, or look towards a long-term wholesale arrangement with them. So those are the options that are sort of on the table with this water supply options update. In the end, what you'll get is a preliminary design, because AR and Mitchell Woods are sort of tracking on a more of an aggressive schedule, as well number 3. You'll get a preliminary design on those to but you'll also get a water supply options master plan update on everything we looked at. And it'll talk about all these things, the costs, water quality, the disinfections, the corrosion control, and the reliability of those sources. So we've made progress on some of them. We've had contact with Panachuk. We've had contact with Manchester. We wrote them each a letter back in September, actually, and asking them for information. It was just this past couple of weeks where we finally were able to close the conversation. So we do have feedback basically on both those options. We said, look, we have emergency connections with you now. What would it take, and what do we have for supply under the current existing conditions? What are our sort of operating parameters? What limits do we have? What confidence can we have it'll be there? And then we asked him if we wanted to have a more permanent supply, what that would look like, what the cost would look like. We did that for both Panachuk and Manchester. We've had conversations and we're continuing to work with GZA on the options that they're involved in, so we understand what the additional supply yields and sustainable yields will get if we add AR at well 4 and 5, what we think well number 3 will produce long-term for you, and then as well as Mitchell Woods, which I think is already a known amount. Collecting water quality data on all these options too, including Panachuk and Manchester. And I have a couple of questions at the end of this update to get some guidance or direction from you on that. So I think PFAS was one of them that we're paying attention to. So we're starting to collect what Manchester and Panachuk have for those for PFAS levels, and deciding on whether or not we have to look towards treatment. There's a lot at play here, and what I proposed with Ron after I chatted with him, I think it was last week, is Underwood would like to come down and do a work session with him and his group in December 9th. And then sort of in preparation from that, I just had a couple questions here and see if there's any other comments for you, so that we have some guidance as we're finalizing some of the initial work to help make those decisions. And and the first one is, and I think we've talked about this in previous meetings when we were looking at Panachuk and Manchester, both in an emergency and a wholesale agreement, we need a little bit of guidance on what kind of treatment we may want to be dealing with PFAS, and maybe you'll think about that differently, whether it's an emergency connection that's only used on an interim basis if needed versus if it became a wholesale arrangement. And both of them have PFAS levels detected. But both of them are fairly low and are in compliance with the new standard or the current standards. What I did learn with Panachuk after conversations with Don Ware is that they are actively treating for PFAS now using their existing sand beds converted to GAC, which were originally converted for taste and odor, which meant they just had to replace them every couple of years. According to Dawn, they are now replacing them on a frequency of, I think, four beds a year. So every 3 years, they change out all 12 beds so that they're working to keep their PFAS levels in finished water down lower. And I think that was even presented or even was noticed in some of the data that Jamie had shared with you a while back that I had. In 2019, their PFAS levels in the finished water system were in the 20s combined when you look at the 4. But I think now, he's reporting, and I don't have all the data in, but at least taking him for his word, they're in the 4 to 5 range for the 4 regulated levels combined, for regulated PFAS levels combined. So it's a big difference in what they're doing now actively than what they may have been doing initially.
Right.
Manchester's a little higher. I think Manchester, according to their consumer confidence reports, I think combined they're in the they're monitoring 5, and they're in the 6 to 14 combined for all 5 of the PFAS in their system. So some of the guidance and some of the discussion is if we're going to use Manchester Waterworks, and we already talked about the chlorination issue, but then we got to decide on PFAS. So initially what we're doing is we're looking at it both ways. We're running a cost without PFAS treatment, and we're running a cost with PFAS treatment. And so that would be on the table.
There was another option, I think John might have brought up about, would it ever be possible to run a line from Manchester's connection directly to wells 4 and 5? and use that water instead of artificial recharge water?
He did. He brought it up in a meeting. I think John spoke to me directly about it as well. So that is going to be in the mix. At least we'll identify it. We may find it becomes cost prohibitive because of the long transmission main, but
Right.
we're going to look at that. So it is on the list. It's one of the options for PFAS treatment related to Manchester Waterworks.
Do you know off the top of your head if carbon would remove chloramines as well? I know carbon removes sodium hypochlorite, chloramine, but not. I don't know if it removes chloramine, because that would sort of solve our chloramine problem as well.
It might, and I'd have to go back and look.
Yeah,
Don,
I'm just pointing it out to make you aware of it if you can.
Yeah, and what I do know a little bit about what little I do know about the chloramination stuff is that they tend to convert it. I think it's an expensive option to take up GAC sites.
Probably,
or GAC,
yeah.
For that. So that they use, they take it to breakpoint chlorination and convert it back to free chlorine. Is typically how it's done. But I will double check to see. But yes, no, John's question is on our spreadsheet in terms of what that cost would look like.
Okay. I know there were a bunch of
I
options.
just did a quick Google search and it does.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it does take it away.
Okay.
At least that the quick Google search.
Yeah.
The 2-second Google search says yes.
I'm just raising the question to
Cost
look into.
prohibitive. Question is it cost prohibitive? I mean, you would think so because it's an iron compound, right? So you would think it does, but question is does it occupy then the receptors for the
Right? Does it exhaust the capacity of the carbon
Right,
faster? Yeah. Right.
I have one more comment. I kind of would like to change our narrative a little bit when we talk about well 3. We have not abandoned well 3 to date, and we have not decided to do so. I know we have talked about it being cost prohibitive not cost prohibitive, but it is probably not the most cost efficient solution to filter first the iron manganese and then later on the PFAS, right? And it might be the better solution. Partially in light of the sodium chloride developments, that it might be a better solution to develop a new well and just clean it scrub it off the PFAS. But I think in general, as a group, and this is something we should run by Jamie too, as a group, we should be clear, at least right now, we have not abandoned and declared well 3 as worthless. And I think we should be clear on that when we talk about that publicly.
That's true. That's correct.
Yeah, I think we're looking towards a well 9, as we're calling it, as a more cost-effective solution. And if that panned out, then I think we'd be in a position to, I would say maybe make well 3 inactive. I don't think I ever would want to officially abandon it. Just because once it's a source on the books, you don't really want to give that up.
It's an asset that we're actively using today, and that currently we have no plans to not use in the foreseeable future.
Right.
And as we look into our different options, I just want to clear that we're not declaring this worthless. It's an asset to the MVD.
And I think what'll play out, and I'll make a point, and to mention this to Jamie too, and what may play out is that at the point where we get a permitted well, it may be that it becomes a replacement well or a supplemental well or whatever it has to be at that time. But that's when the decision, I think, would be made. But it's a good point, Wolf. You're right. It's an active well. We've only chose to look at other options to see if we can save a buck.
Right.
That's right.
Okay.
So all I was really looking for is we're going to go into this December 9th and we'll set something up with Ron and staff, and whether it's a work session that the board wants to be involved in, or some folks from the board want to be involved in, we're going to target the 9th to do that. And just whatever guidance and feedback you give us tonight will help us prepare for that meeting. But there's enough where we felt we wanted a couple hours to sit down and go through things before a draft report is generated.
Do you have a time for that?
We haven't set a time for that.
Afternoon, I'm assuming, or?
Ron, we didn't set a time, I don't think. We just targeted the day.
Why am I thinking, we were saying the afternoon, I believe. I think I have an appointment earlier that day.
All right, well, maybe we did set a time. I put it in, I kept the day open for myself, so whatever works best for you guys.
Okay. I will confirm that, and I'll let you know tomorrow. If I do have an
Typically
appointment.
mid-afternoon or something, right?
Yep.
Later afternoon or something.
I'll pencil it in for 2 or 3.
Is that something we can do virtually, or do we want to get elbow to elbow to get to? You're going to need like look over plans and things, or?
We're definitely going to look over plans, and we're going to, so everybody can visualize what it is we're going to be looked at. And, we won't be done with our analysis, but we're going to have a work plan for everything that we're going to be talking about, and the pros and cons and the issues we'll be facing. So, it can be done virtually. We've done it both ways, but I guess I would follow your lead. We can do it either way.
Probably prefer virtually if it can be done virtually. Just because I know we'll probably get a better audience of commissioners that are more willing to do it virtually than side by side. And I don't know what state of affairs the COVID situation is going to be in a month from now, but we may have to do it virtually because that might be the only way we can. But if you can think about kind of keying it to a virtual presentation, I think that would probably be amenable if I had to guess everybody's position on that. But again, if there's a way we can get through the same thing we want to get through virtually, if we're not missing out on anything, probably be my preference. I don't know if anybody else has any comments on that. The other thing is,
on that, John.
what's that, John?
I said I'm with you on that.
Okay, I didn't hear you. Have these been in the past noticed as public meetings? I know we have a quorum of commissioners. I don't know if that means I would imagine it's agended and everything and noticed to the public.
Yeah, we would agenda it.
Okay.
Post it. If there's going to be a quorum.
Right. Which I would hope there would be, because I think we're going to be looking to make some decisions usually at those work sessions. So it'd be good to have a quorum of commissioners on that can be present and make those decisions. So.
Yeah, just to be clear, we're not going to be at the point where we're going to say, here's everything that we came up with, you're ready to make a decision. But certainly what we're going to do is we're going to show you everything that we've done to the point that you're going to be armed with giving feedback and, start thinking about what those decisions might be.
Right.
And to make sure that we've looked at everything that you want us to look at. And so we'll have enough so that we'll have a very healthy discussion about it. But I'm not expecting or needing, I think, that we would certainly have any decisions that would have to be made. What we do hope to come out of that is that we are moving in certain directions for certain things. Like we've just talked about the possible supplemental or replacement of well number 3, the AR and Mitchell Woods. What we do hope to find out is that maybe at a minimum, we know that we're staying the course is the right thing to do with some of the things that we can stay the course with. And then maybe some of the longer term, or it'll take a little bit more time to sort of play out things like a Manchester or a Panachek option that might look different than what you have now. So we've done enough that we're already having some feelings or thoughts on that, and we hope to lay some of that out on the 9th, so that some of the projects that are good for you we can continue and make them go.
Yeah, and I think on that same note, some of those options, I'm not sure. I would expect some of them might require warrant articles, and I don't know if we are in a position where they would have to be this coming up year in March, or could they be we wait until March of 2022. So we may, you know what I mean? It just, if anything we're making decisions on in the next month or two is going to affect any kind of warrant articles that need to come up in March. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what are we talking about? The end of January, beginning of February, that we need to have those warrant articles sort of figured out for the March meeting?
At least by the end of January, and for the public hearing in February, definitely.
Yeah. So that's coming right up, and I don't know that we're going to need any, but I'm just, you know, if we do decide to do something that requires a warrant article based on the master plan update, you know, keep that in mind, because that's the next thing we're going to have to look at if we need to do it in time. If it can't wait till March of 2022, and we need to consider it in March of 2021, which I think the way we're moving with everything else is pretty fast. So it might be something we might want to think about looking at in March of 21.
And we should be, at the December meeting, you will see some real costs for some of the options. So if we are comfortable with proceeding with one or two of them, and you make a decision, for example, on AR or Mitchell Woods for sure, if you want to proceed, then we would be in the position to support a number that you could take to town to the annual meeting if you wanted to.
Right, and I know we've got capital reserves for some of those smaller items, but you know, if it's a larger item, you know, a connection to Manchester with a treatment plant or something would be something that we probably wouldn't want to just fund out of capital reserves. We'd probably need to take bond out on that. So, you know, I think that would need to go to annual meeting. So just keep those ideas in mind. That's all. You know, it sounds like the timeline should work out though, if we do need to do something like that for a warrant article.
Yeah, no, that was somewhat intentional, knowing you're coming up with budget cycling and so forth. So.
Right.
And I know you're talking about the emergency connection next for Manchester, and that was sort of prompted by us when we spoke to Manchester. They realized that that's a 10-year contract that needs to be refreshed. So, but that's, you know, that option will be, what I do know is when you talk about that, you know, you proceed with that, it's not going to limit you on anything else you might want to do in the future. Both Pennachuck and Manchester said, we've got water. You want water? That we can, you know, we can get it to you. We do have water for you, if you know. So.
Right. Are you going to be? You're not. Are you going to be participating in that agenda item tonight, or are you not part of that? Is it something that needs your attention? You think not?
I wasn't asked. I can if you want me to. I would just say I think it's a good thing to continue to update that. So that would be my part.
Okay. All right. Okay, anybody else have any other questions on this master plan update or related information that we talked about? Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to point out, I know a lot of this is looking at developing additional source capacity. I was looking through the minutes from the September 21st meeting, just to refresh everyone's memory in here. I'll read it. It says, there's a system capacity of 5.4 million gallons per day, and that's based on the permitted withdrawals. However, in previous master plans, it had been identified that MVD may see maximum daily outputs as high as 5.9 million gallons. And it says that MVD would need to look to produce an additional 500,000 gallons per day. And I can't remember that 5.4 of capacity. That's not realistic though, because our wells aren't actually putting out our permitted capacity. So I guess what I'm saying is I think we need to look at what I'm trying to wrestle in my mind is that until we have the capacity to meet those high peak summer demands, we're basically trading our existing customers' irrigation capacity for every new development that comes knocking at our door for water right now. So every gallon per day we give away to a new project, we're taking that exact away from our irrigation customers. Is that not a true statement without putting any additional sources on?
Well, it's one way to look at it unless you consider Pennachuck and Manchester as those, sources to provide those peaks. And those are policy decisions, obviously, you as a board would have to wrestle with if you want to, to limit growth in town or figure out ways to sort of manage this. But sort of historically, right or wrong, I think it's been a reasonable approach. We have been looking at Pennachuck and Manchester as a source to manage those things, so you didn't have to get yourself in the position to not limit, town projects in town.
Right.
But that is going to be a big part of what we'll want to talk to you a bit about on the 9th, because the target flows or the target needs. We need a target. We need to know, do you want us to look for 800 gallons a minute? Do you want us to look for 800 gallons a minute plus 400 more? I mean, historically, we've always been in a search for new water, so that's not new. But it's what it is you want us to do, and what we're doing more now that maybe hasn't been done historically was the conservation end of it. Is there going to be some ways to avoid some costs or to minimize some capital costs? So that's a good thing to put into the mix. But it is something that you'll have to decide a little bit on how you want to guide those capital projects. And I think once you see the numbers, we start looking at the dollars too, I think that will play into helping you make a decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right, I'm good. Anybody else have anything to offer? All right. And
Dawn, would you like me to stick around for the next?
yeah, if you could, I think it should be quick. But I just wanted to follow up before we let you go. Has there? I don't know if you've looked further into any of the zeolite issue with MVD labs. I don't know if you have anything to report on that. If not,
nothing new to report other than they know that they want to work on developing a protocol like we left last time. Okay. So we've reached out. Mike's taken the lead on that one with Scott over at XTD. I can't remember their name, XTD or something like that. Yeah. Yeah. And so he's working on that. So that's in progress.
Okay. And then we got an action item list here. I'll just run through to see if there's something that's on Underwood's list. Let's see, investigate other contracts to aid MVD with stronger language. I think that's, we could probably plan on bringing that up when we send out the RFPs and the bids for well 2 treatment plan, I believe, right?
That's the time to do it. So we're not far from having to make some adjustments if we want to make adjustments. Okay, and then I think you were going to have a proposal for rate evaluation for the November 2020 meeting, but did we decide to, did we execute that already? Or did you approved it? Yeah, we already did. Yeah, that was at our meeting. Was that last week or 2 weeks ago? Last week. Yeah, you approved it. It was right. to look at the audit and to look at the conservation rate design. All right, so that's action item 20. So that's, I guess we can take that off the list, right? That's done. We're started that, and I think Megan is coming in to meet with, or maybe she already did. I think she met with Jill to start collecting information on that. All right, so good. That's another one we can cross off that number 20, Amanda. If you're on board with that. Okay. All right, I'm good. So I think we can move on if we want to. It looks like the next item would be the Manchester Water Works agreement relative to emergency interconnection on a Daniel Webster Highway. And I think we have a copy of that agreement. I think it's just an agreement that renews every 10 years from what I gather.
Yeah, really, I tried to talk to Phil, and with everybody, I believe Keith had spoken with him, and it kind of sparked him to bring up the agreement, and he realized it was need to be renewed. So that's where it forwarded on to me and to get to the board.
So I noticed in here, it talked about completion of facilities. And I think that's just the meter pit and all that stuff. And that's all done. That's been done for quite a while, I believe.
Yep.
It also talks about a booster pump or something in here, but I think that's all part of if we wanted to bring that water on a more permanent basis throughout our entire distribution system. So I was just on section 2.5, it talks about the MSDC. What does that stand for? Development charges or something? Is that what that is?
Yeah, that's the MSDC. That's the Merrimack Source Development Charge. But that's basically what they're saying is this is an emergency connection only. It's not for, and if we have the water supply, we'll give it to you. It's not a long-term supply. So that's when you would start kicking in. That's their way of saying you can't use it as a long-term supply, or we're going to ding you for the Merrimack Source Development Charge. At this point, I don't think you want to get into the position to want to pay that yet.
Right. Because that's like what, three something per.
It's going to be $3.88, I think, as of January per gallon.
Right. So that's like a million or half, a million gallons a day. We're looking at $3 million.
Almost 4.
Right. That's true. All right. And it does say in here, if after period of 10 days, 10 consecutive days, that they could hit us for some of that or something, I think. Am I reading that right?
It does say that.
Yeah. I wasn't aware of that. So.
And that's the same. I don't have the new agreement, but I have the 10-year-old agreement. It's the same language.
Well, I think we're just signing to renew that old agreement. I don't think anything's changing, right?
No, nothing's changed. Just renewing the term.
Right, because the agreement that we have that has details in it is dated the 3rd of July of 2000. So that's probably the agreement that was renewed last time, as well as what we're renewing tonight then too.
Yes.
All right, so that helps, Keith. That was the one question I had, is if I was reading that correctly, and when it talks about the billing in there and that 10-day consecutive day period.
Yeah, you just want to be aware of that, obviously, so that whatever we do, I mean, they're not, within reason, but you want to be aware of that because we're not at the point where you want to pay for that.
Right.
But I just want you to keep I'd like it that you keep your options open from an emergency point of view up there. It's very, yeah.
Ron, did you have any other thing to add to this at all, or?
Nope.
Okay.
I would agree with Keith. I think it's important to keep it open for an emergency.
And it does say in here that if we want to enter into any other kind of agreement on a more of a long-term usage basis, this just goes away. We can extinguish this agreement, I think, and draft a new agreement if we wanted to do something on a more permanent basis. So I don't have any other questions. I don't know if anybody else has any other questions, but I think we're just in a position to agree to renew this agreement at this point tonight. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and ask. Otherwise, somebody can make a motion. I assume we need a motion for this.
Yes.
Okay. I'll leave it to the pleasure of the board.
I would make that motion that we execute this extension of that contract.
All right, motion by John. Do I have a second?
Seconded by Ken.
Second by Ken. Is that language in the motion sufficient for everybody?
Yep.
Okay. That being said, then if there's no other questions, I'll call the motion. So all those in favor, we'll start by a roll call vote. We'll go with John first.
I approve.
And then Ken
Approve.
and Wolf.
Approve?
And myself, I approve as well. So that's carries 4-0-0. And I should mention that Paul McLaughlin is excused from this evening's meeting, so that's why these motions have been 4-0-0. All right, so I think that's all we need from Underwood at this point. Thanks for sticking around. I appreciate that.
Cool, thank you, guys.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Have a good night. All right,
We'll see you
Thank
on
you,
the 9th, 10th?
if not sooner. All right, have a good night.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. All right, so the next on the agenda is to discuss PFAS concentrations in the distribution system. I'm not sure where that question came from. Was that
Guilty.
Wolf? Okay. You want to give us a little background then?
Yeah, once again, this is based out of comments that I received from citizens in town and some discussions again in social media. It was unclear to many what the fact that wells 4 and 5 came back online, filtered to non-detect, did to individual people in town, in different areas in town. Again, a lot of people begin to understand thanks to repeat discussions about it, and thanks to the MVD newsletter and Facebook page and so on. A lot of people begin to understand that the excuse me, that the distribution system and the wells and the tanks in Merrimack are non-centralized, right? They're non-central in nature. So we have a number of wells distributed throughout town in specific locations. We have lines that go from wells to various tanks in town, and we have consumers and businesses that are already connected to the lines that go straight from the well to the tanks. Then we have some customers, actually the majority of customers, that are receiving the water after it has been blended to a certain extent within various tanks in town. And there is no such thing as one part of town only getting water from one well or one tank, or one water from all wells, blended to a certain ratio all the time. It is fluctuating based on usage of all those consumers that are on those lines that are going directly from a certain well to the tank. The more, obviously, the less or the more they use along those lines, the more or less water reaches the tanks, and then it also just goes from there how people are using the water to what extent in the system. So what it basically boiled down to was people were asking, what does it mean if 4 and 5 are coming back online filtered? Does that mean that, say, for example, the east end of town along Daniel Webster Highway and within a certain radius around wells 4 and 5 can now expect PFAS-free water? How about people that are on the Turkey Hill tank? How about people that are on the Hutchinson tank and so on? And with the current PFAS monitoring samples, we can't really give anybody any kind of answer on that, right? We might be able to give people a feeling what kind of PFAS concentrations they are now seeing a month after the wells came online in comparison to the last sample taken prior to them coming online. But the question was, does it make sense for us to pinpoint some more strategic point, to define some more strategic points, to take samples, to give people that sense of PFAS levels in their water? And my understanding is actually that staff was proactive prior to even discussing that, and has added some sample points in the system.
We did. We added
You wanna
4.
start?
I'm sorry, Wolf. I didn't mean to.
No, go ahead.
We added 4 sites. We did one, the north end of town up by Society Hill. One on Continental Boulevard out towards kind of not quite to Penchuk Square, but we have a sample station out there. And then we did one up by Hutchinson Tank, and we've did another one over by Parker Tank to kind of get the high service area in 2 different locations to kind of see what that blend would be. I don't believe we get the results back yet, have
Not
we?
yet.
No.
But we do not have these prior to the wells going online, right?
We do
These
not,
sample
no.
points, we do not. So
No.
okay, so it's
Well,
just a general.
That's not a fair, we did do one sample round. We did Turkey Hill Tank, I think not Hutchinson.
Parker.
Parker Tank. I think that was it.
Maybe I'll
And
have
when
to
you
go
say
back.
Parker, when you say
Um,
Parker, that's somewhere on the feed toward Parker, right?
That
Because
one, I think
Parker
we
is
took,
currently not in use, right?
I think it was on at the time, and we actually took a sample at Parker Tank, I believe,
Yep,
if memory serves me right.
yep.
And now,
It was at a sample, we did a sample station around the corner.
okay,
It's more so corner of Lake, South Lake and Parker Drive. We have a sample station out there, so.
okay.
And we can add a couple more if we, so we did, basically, we've got the high service at the tanks. If we want to add a couple more to get a couple more locations in the regular pressure zone, that's fine as well.
I guess, and not knowing the layout of the system as well as you do, I think, if there's any main branches in the system that supply a large number of people off of the main distribution lines, right? Like certain developments or something like that, or certain areas of town, might be worth thinking about, right? I mean, on the other hand, we're talking about, I appreciate those desires to know this information. I think it makes sense for us to do this temporarily, but we all know that the goal is that within the next 2 years, we have the whole system PFAS non-detect, right? So I think it's a good idea to do this temporarily, and it might also be important for us to understand how much residual background noise we have in the distribution system itself, right? I mean, we probably assume that there's some PFAS contamination that need to be flushed out of the system over time. They're not in the water; they're deposited in the lining inside of the piping system and so on, into any kind of mineral deposits and so on, right? And need to be flushed out over time. So it might be a good idea in general to do this for a while. But then eventually we can probably reduce the number of samples again once everybody in town is on the same level of non-detect supply.
Yeah, Wolf, I just want to jump in. I think you raise a good point, because when we took that visit to Hoosick Falls, New York, 2 years ago, was it? I think they did say it took a little bit of time to really flush out all of the PFAS out of their distribution system, if I remember correctly. And I don't know if that just has to deal with some of the sediment in the pipes and things like that, but do you remember that, Ron, a little bit, talking about when they said that it took a little, I want to say maybe a couple of months before they started getting non-detect results at the extremes of the distribution system. But again, I don't know that any measurement now is going to, tell us how to predict when our system's going to be flushed in the future or anything like that. But
No, but
I do know.
that
ahead,
is a
Ron.
good point. That once we get all of the treatment plants in, and it probably wouldn't be a bad thing to do after we flush, just to do a couple rounds of PFAS sampling just to see what we're
Right.
getting in the distribution system. I think
Right.
now it would be more of a curiosity to see how the blend's going in different areas, but I think we would still need to continue it once we do the flushing after the 2 years to see if make sure it's not in the distribution system.
Right.
Part of the reason why people are asking is because You know, we have people whose GAC filters, for example, are coming up for replacement, right? And they're, excuse me, they're in-home or whole house GAC filtration systems are coming up for replacement, and they're asking me, does it, you know, do we even need it yet, right? And obviously, I can only give them a personal opinion, right? I can't give them a commissioner recommendation, let alone an MVD recommendation for liability purposes alone. But I told people obviously that right now we still have a blend, we have a mix going on, right, of different wells. We probably have some residual contamination in the piping system and in the distribution system, and it's probably not the right time to just shrug it off and say we don't need that filter anymore, right? So, but the more data we have to prove that, you know, one way or another, the safer we are really as an organization to be transparent. What is the current situation in the system?
Yeah.
Different points in the system.
It's going to be a transition period, like Ron
Right.
said, by the time we get all of our treatment plants online. And then, you know, we never know if we're still relying on Pennachuck and or Manchester for emergency water. If we don't treat those sources, which for emergency purposes, I'd have a hard time spending money to treat something just for emergency purposes. But if it's something that's more permanent, you know, maybe we'd have to take a closer look at that, obviously. But, you know, if we always rely on Pennachuck and Manchester for emergency purposes, and we're not treating those emergency connections, there's always a chance then that you're going to get PFAS in our distribution system, even after our treatment plants are online. And if people are concerned about 1 part per million or any detectable PFAS in the water, then that's a decision they're going to have to make about renewing their own in-house filter media. You know, I mean, we're doing the best we can based on the Warren articles, and the Warren articles were represented as goals that we would have non-detect, but the way the articles were written verbally is that it's the design is to reduce PFAS. And I think legally that was a smart move to do it that way. So, you know, I'm just pointing those factors out, that even after all of our treatment plants are online, if we do need to rely on emergency water from Nashua or Manchester and we don't treat that water, we still will have low level. Granted, it's going to be very low level because it's going to be mixing with the rest of our sources that are non-detect. So I think that's a good thing. So we just got to kind of compare, does it make sense to spend millions of dollars to go from, you know, a level of 2 or 3 or 4 down to non-detect? That's a decision we need to make, but that's, you know, that's basically putting all the cards on the table. That's what we're looking at right now. And those are the effects that I can see occurring. And it's just up to people to decide if it's their own choice to continue to maintain filters in their home or not based on that. So
maybe to keep this short, I already appreciate that you know, that staff was proactive without even, you know, hesitating here and putting some additional sample points in the system. Maybe as commissioners, or at least me as a commissioner, I would like to encourage that we take another look. Is there any other points that make sense to do so, right? To add yet another one, or are we covered with what we have? You guys know the distribution system better than anybody else.
I'd like to add a couple more in the regular pressure zone. We did the north end and the south end. I'd like to get a couple more points in the middle. And I think we're covered on the high service. With the
Because
two
it's pretty
locations.
homogeneous.
Yeah.
It's pretty homogeneous on the high service side, high pressure side. I
So
agree.
I'd be interested to see how the two results compare in the high service area, because if you think about the high service area, all the water should be exactly the same because it all goes through the booster station, right? So then from where it goes from there, it just splits, and that's the same water. The only variation you're going to have is over time, because you may be using one well more than another on one day. So you're going to get variations that way. But whatever water is going through that booster station is going out into the distribution system. And granted, there may be a little bit of attenuation in the Hutchinson tank, you know, because so maybe some of the new water is going to go to the north side of the high pressure zone, and then some of the water is going to go to the south side and hang out in the Hutchinson tank for a day or so. So you might get variations on the north side of town versus the south side of town in the high pressure zone, because you don't have storage on the north side unless the Parker tank is used, which it's really not. But, you know, I mean, those are so, I don't know. I don't know what real benefit. It's interesting to know what the results are, how they compare, but I don't know if we can really draw any major.
Well, but we don't
conclusions.
have, we still have a loop on the north end of town, right? In the high
In the
pressure zone.
it kind of splits. One goes to, one goes up McQueston and the other one comes back down Amherst Road. Isn't that right, Ron?
Yes.
Right, but we don't have like, I mean, the water isn't stagnating up there, right? It's still coming from the booster station either way, right? So,
No, it's more of a dead end
To the north.
to the north. It is looped. So towards Parker Road tank, it is kind of a dead end out in that area. It doesn't loop back at all. Going towards Hutchinson, it does loop in a sense. It's a bigger system out that on, I won't say it's all part of the same system, but there's more area out there that we cover with the high service. So there is more looping in that end of town.
To the south, yeah.
Yeah.
right, but there is no storage vessels. So the volume of water that sits in those lines is not like days worth of water, right?
Well, as the Hutchinson tank is on the high zone in the south.
Right.
End of town.
Well, I'm talking about the dead end, the unlooped part. It's not like there's any.
No, that would get used. I mean, it would theoretically
It gets
get
used
used.
within a few hours, right? I mean,
Possibly. I don't, yeah, it could, I guess.
I mean, you can have that water in the Hutchinson tank for probably a day or two or more, actually.
Hutchinson, the high service really, I mean, we just filled Parker tank because of
The booster
we were going to do
station.
another shutdown for the booster station.
Yeah.
But Hutchinson tank really works. That tank turns over daily. I mean, it's mixing. I mean, it gets in there and it does work.
Yeah.
So I would agree that, you know, if we're not filling Parker tank, that water does turn over probably just as much as the rest of the system. I mean, it does. Obviously, they're using the water to make that turn over as quick as it does. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not hanging out too long in the lines.
All right. Anything else anybody wanted to add on that? If not, I guess we can move on.
should we
Anything else?
make a to-do out of that? That maybe at the next meeting that Ron wants to maybe share with us what
The
he
results?
came up with and the results. You know,
actually
the
gonna be
additional sample points.
Yeah, we'll figure those out here in the next day or two because we're sampling on Thursday. So,
Okay.
All right.
Well, then we don't need it to do then, but maybe reviewing the results then when they come back.
If you want, we can make it an action item. We haven't added any yet tonight, so we have to add something. Right?
Keep Amanda from falling asleep.
Yeah, so if you want to do that, we can add an action item just for, what do you want it to say? Well, for Ron to share the results of the previous testing in the distribution system and anything about collecting additional samples or anything, or
Yeah, I guess, yeah, superintendent to share which additional sample points were added, PFAS sample points were added throughout the distribution system, and the results.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
And if you can remember, you can probably do that as your superintendent report if we don't have to make it a separate agenda item. I don't know what you feel about that, but that's,
Actually, that'd be fine, because that'd probably be the only thing I'd be reporting on, because everything else is taken up during the regular meeting.
okay. All right. That sounds good. So that being said, I think we're able to move on to the minutes. So we have 2 minutes to approve. And I guess we can start with the first one is back in September 21st, 2020. Does anybody want to make a motion to accept those minutes? And then we can talk about any edits.
I'll move we accept the minutes from 9/21/20.
All right. Motion by John,
Seconded by Ken.
second by Ken. If anybody has any corrections to offer, I don't. I'm good with those as printed. Everybody good with that? Then we can, let's vote on that. So we'll start with roll call vote. We'll start with John. You made the motion.
Aye.
And Ken?
Seconded. Approved.
And approve. Wolf?
Approved.
And myself, I'll approve those two. So that carries 4-0-0. The next minutes we have is October 19, 2020. And if
Yeah,
you
I
want
haven't-
to make a motion on those.
No, I haven't added on, excuse me, I haven't added on those, and that is on page 2. And I'm not sure what was said in the meeting. In detail, I don't recall the details anymore, but I'm pretty sure we hinted that the $100,000 of additional funds that Saint-Gobain offered, gifted, I fairly want to say, to the MVD, that they were a fraction, small fraction, of what was requested by MVD as far as cost overruns goes. And I think that is missing here in these minutes. You know, I want to be fair. I want to say that, you know, anything is appreciated, right? $100,000 is no small change, but it is small change in comparison to what I believe to be ballpark $1.8 million of a shortfall.
Between what the settlement agreement covered versus what the actual construction bid was.
Correct, and especially considering that we discussed again operating and maintenance costs during these additional negotiations, which we all know are going to be millions over millions of dollars over the years, over many years, decades, lifetimes. So I think we need to maybe look back at the recording of the meeting, if that's possible, and see if a comment was made, or we can certainly edit, you know, a comment into that. But I wouldn't want this to be sitting the way it is right now.
If you want to try and paraphrase something, maybe after line 11,
Well,
that might be easier.
and again, I mean, these are meeting minutes, so I don't want to, you know, add something that wasn't said. So I'd almost feel more comfortable if we go back to the recording, right? I don't know if as an organization we can add comments to minutes after the fact.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I think it's got to be, if it was
Gotta be
said in the
factual.
meeting. If it
Right.
wasn't, I don't think it should go.
So
in.
I don't know if Amanda and Bill, if you guys could possibly go back and see if we find something that puts that in relationship to the actual cost overruns. I would appreciate that.
I thought, isn't that this in the discussion part? It's not in the motion. Saint-Gobain did not agree to fund 100% of the construction, but MVD felt there were some items that should have been included in the settlement agreement. There's discussion.
Yeah, it just doesn't really clarify that we're talking about 18 times and more that number.
We're talking about what? I'm sorry.
It doesn't seem to to reflect the fact that $100,000 is a drop in the bucket in comparison to the actual cost overruns.
Okay.
All right, so we should probably table these then until we can get clarification on that edit.
I would say so, yeah.
I agree with that.
Hey, Don, I did catch one
Yeah,
edit on page 3. Line 6, I guess, where it's the email noted that Underwood began pumping into the system October 7th, 2020. Shouldn't that read well 4 and 5?
Well, 4. I mean, well, 5 only, right? Because it was well 5, then.
Well, I'm not referring to, we refer to as the 4 and 5 treatment plant.
well, it's under the heading of Wells 4 and 5 project update, but
Underwood began pumping into the pumping well 5 into the system on October 7th.
yeah, because it was only one well at the
Okay.
time, right?
So yeah, you're right.
So before we table these, if anybody else has any corrections, you could probably
Yep.
offer them now.
On
Amanda?
page 2, line 28.
Correcting
Under
yourself?
I noticed it tonight. Under motion carried, it should read 400, not 500.
Shame on you, Amanda.
Oh, I know, but I caught it.
And I have a
Good.
small one on page 6, line 23. That should be "and," not "and," to
Page
perform NRSCCT.
6.
Page 6, line 23. To perform NRSSCT.
Oh, yeah.
Minute, but nevertheless.
Okay. So we'll table these to the next meeting. Any other comments on the minutes, or can we move on to the next item on the agenda? And what is that? That's the action item list.
Item 21 is taken care of, and not because of me, but because of my staff.
All right, good. Let's see. Ron, did you mention that number 22, you did look into that about verifying the current billing software can handle tiered rates?
Yes,
Yeah, I
And it
thought you
can.
said that at our last meeting, right? Or,
I did, and I actually confirmed it again today as well. I had talked to Jill before the last one, but I actually confirmed again. But yes, it can.
okay, good.
Yep.
All right, so without any objection, I think we can take 22 off the list as well.
So 18, 21, and 22?
Um,
Is that was from the other agenda items?
yeah, and 20 as well, right?
10. Did we say 10?
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Okay, 20, Underwood development proposal, yeah. So we got 10, 18, 20, 21, and 22 that are all set?
I believe so.
Okay.
What about 12?
So I do have some clarification on that. So that is referring to this SDC charge, correct?
Go back and look at the minutes.
No, that was, we had some engineering orders for either Emery and Garrett or Underwood, and we weren't clear.
If we
That
could
was
use system development charge, correct?
Correct.
So-
Okay, SDC.
So the SDC has been used on a new source the way it reads. But this is where it gets kind of, so like, well, 9 technically is a new source, but it's not, it's a replacement. So technically it wouldn't, we couldn't use it for that.
I think this was actually more for like, like the Mitchell Woods well, like some of the work that, like with the permit this was for engineering orders for Underwood or for Emery and Garrett. And the question was whether or not we can use the capital reserve funds for well development at all for engineering orders, or whether they need to come out of the operating budget.
Okay. I believe it can be for like Mitchell Woods because that is a new source.
Mm-hmm.
So we could use the system development charge because that's for new source development.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't be able to use, obviously, equipment and facilities or land development. Land development, I guess if you're going to purchase the land, there might be some related costs in there, but I looked today, I could not find it in the minutes. I went
you
back
did?
to, yeah, I went back to the 5th. I couldn't see where it was. I couldn't find it for the date that was in here, 5/18, but that's not to say that I may have missed it as well, but.
Oh, I can take a look at that tomorrow.
But as far as, like I said, SDC, as long as it's a new source, you can use your system development to the system, but a replacement for like a well 9, we wouldn't be able to. So let's leave that one on and we'll do some more follow-up on that one. Or,
Yeah, probably. Sounds
okay.
like you might want to look into it a little more.
Yeah.
Just on a related note, on item number 2, I did see, I think in the last meeting packet that we never got to, you did have a list of the engineering service request tracking sheet. And did we add something on here to add Jamie? Emery
Yeah,
Garrett
that-
on there?
and we haven't had a chance to get that one.
Right.
And yet we're still looking at how we would incorporate that into the spreadsheet.
Oh, yeah.
So part of it's done. So if we can leave that one on as well.
Yeah. All right, I see it in here now that it does say Emery and Garrett. I thought it just said Underwood on there, but that is in there. So the only other question I had is, would it be easier for you to track these projects if they were broken out in QuickBooks,
They are.
in the accounting software? Or would that be too much of a?
Well, I was talking about this with Jill yesterday. No? Yeah. No, not yesterday. Friday?
Maybe.
It's been a long day. Issuing everything a PO because that would cover
Tracking.
you'd be able to track EGGI as well as Emery and Garrett, Underwood through the PO, and that's something that actually Michelle generates through QuickBooks. And then it would be directly associated with whatever ESR or what does Emery Garrett use for, is it
Project number.
Project number? So yeah, we could link it directly to a project number or ESR.
I'm thinking that way we would almost get an update in the monthly, report from Michelle.
Yeah, it would be a report generated from Michelle, and then it would be, if anything was put against that. So absolutely, yeah.
It might be easier for you to have to go through all of, it must be somewhat of a task, I would imagine, for you to go through all that. And, and as long as it's every new ESR and every new project gets assigned a separate line item in QuickBooks. And then when those bills come in, I assume those bills reference the ESR and the project number, and they could just get charged.
Well, the bill would actually reference the purchase order number, which then would go back
Okay.
into Michelle's system. So yeah, it would. It would link everything together, yes.
All right. So yeah, I guess if you want to talk to Michelle or whatever about maybe getting it, and I guess we would also be talking about putting all the existing ESRs into QuickBooks, or how much of a challenge would that be? I mean, it's one thing to start fresh now going forward, but it's going backwards. I don't know if.
I would think the projects that are ongoing, if they don't have an PO, we issue the PO and pick it up from there. But let me talk to Michelle. Maybe, I don't want it to be too, those maybe we just track separately or.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to put burden on the staff. Obviously, you guys don't need that right now, but it's something we should probably be looking to get to that point, So
Yep.
if you want, let's just keep that in mind under that task item, number 2.
Yep.
Sound good?
Yes.
All right, good. Anybody else have any other comments on these task items, or we can move on to?
I do.
Go ahead.
For number 12, that was referring to the following up on whether or not capital reserve funds could be used for Emery and Garrett's change order number 2, which was dated May 14th, and it is specifically for the salt mitigation.
Oh.
Right.
I don't know if that answers any of your questions.
Probably reinforces that we got to keep it on the list.
Yeah, but it was specifically for Emery and Garrett.
All right, well, that's helpful.
Thank you.
Good call. All right, where are we at here? Old business. Anybody have any old business? The only one thing I wanted to offer, and it kind of dawned on me when I was taking, we have this whole, well, that's kind of weird. This whole packet of information that we get, which is at 3/4 of an inch or an inch thick. And I purged some of it, but I want to hold on to a lot of it. And I got like about 5 brown wallets full of backup material now, brown folders. I had mentioned this before, that's why I'm bringing it up under old business, but I just was wondering what the feeling of the board would be to have these packets put into a PDF file where we can download them or something instead of having them distributed. I mean, on the one hand, it might be good to have hard copies in front of you so you can mark things up, I guess. But I don't know if it's not a big deal to anybody else, we can just continue to do it as we are. But I was just wondering if it might be easier on us if instead of getting a packet in the mail or delivered every Friday. And I don't know, Jill, what you get, is it mostly in PDF documents and Word files now, or is it mostly in hard copy? When you assemble the packets, what do they consist of?
The engineers will send me maps or whatever, and then I do up the dividing sheets and just match them up with the agenda items.
So are you printing out all of these, or are they coming to you already in hard copy format to begin with?
No, I'm printing them out.
Okay. So, I mean, it would be able, if you have the right copy of Adobe, you can just kind of assemble every PDF file and add them all together into one massive large file. But
It wouldn't come out as a packet then. I mean, what the only way that I could do it before, when Wolf was away, was I had to go through and put the packet together and then scan the entire packet so that you get the dividers, you know what goes with what.
yeah, but I know if you're starting with PDF files and then printing them and then scanning them, you can just assemble all those PDF files into one larger file.
So just dump them in one file without any dividers or anything?
You could, or you could insert like dividers in the PDF file as well. It's basically whatever you have a digital copy of, you can assemble it into a PDF file. I'm just thinking for storage purposes, if we, want to have something on file even of what the packet was for a particular meeting. Right now, I don't know if we're keeping copies of all of that stuff.
Yep, we have hard copies of every single board packet.
Oh, you do?
Yep.
All right, I wasn't aware of that. Which must be taking up a heck of a storage space, I would be guessing, but anyways. All right.
Well, fair warning, I will probably be overseas for the next meeting. So the next meeting probably would be one that I would ask to be mailed a digital copy of the package. And I agree, I mean, in general, it's possible for sure. Just like you create those blue tab or dividers.
Right.
I guess you're doing this in Word, right? You could print them into PDF and then just insert them as another PDF file into your master file PDF file. I think both would be advantageous, to be honest. I kind of like the package because I do take a lot of notes. I wouldn't mind having a backup, to be able to go and look back during a meeting instead of having to lug the big folder for the last 3 or 4 meetings to the MVD office. Not that it's a problem right now for a couple months, the way it looks with the pandemic. But for the next meeting, for sure, it looks like unless something major happens, I will be not available to attend in person.
I don't know if there's anybody that could set that up for you, the copy of Adobe and basically how to go through that and assemble all of the files. I mean, I do it myself when I prepare reports. I've probably got about 15 different files that I have to assemble together. And it's literally just basically dragging them in order, and then you hit combine and they all just come together into one PDF file. And it's a mix and match of 8.5 by 11s and 24 by 36 inch plans and 8.5, set 11 by 17s. It can handle all of that. It's just a matter of, it might actually even make your job even easier, believe it or not, but I don't care. I'm just putting it out there. It looks like you're probably going to need to put something together. If Wolf's going to be gone, he wouldn't be able to get his packet anyway. So something digitally would be a good idea. It might be necessary for the next meeting, at least for Wolf, if you're out of town, obviously.
Well, maybe Don, you can share what license of Adobe you have, right? Or third-party program.
Yeah.
And then we start looking into it and see, is it an effort or not? Does it have value? And then we take it from there.
I'll tell you what. Let's make that an action item. How's that?
You share that license?
We have our IT guy coming in on the 18th, so that's something we can talk to him about and look at you.
I just don't think they're going to be happy with the maps. They're just going to be regular size. But you can see how it goes.
Yeah, well,
I think it would be important to make sure that when we get information from everybody that submits maps and reports and whatnot, that we always have to make sure that they send us a digital copy, a PDF file, because that way you can just take that whole report and it can be inserted right into the packet with the entire file as one file. The problem is if people hand you hard copies, then you got to go through the hassle of scanning all of that to get it into a digital format. So, I mean, in this day and age, I got to think 99% of whatever is produced originates from a computer file. So
it generally is.
Taking that computer file, and it's usually a PDF or a Word file, and if you get a Word file, I think it'll convert automatically, or you can just create a Word file, a PDF file from a Word file, and then take that PDF file and assemble all the PDFs together, and that's how you can create the packet. But I'll let you know what the version of Adobe that I have. It's obviously not the reader, because the reader you can only read PDF files, but there's just a regular standard version of Adobe Acrobat, I think, allows you to combine all these PDF files. All right, so that was my only thing for old business. Anybody else have any new business? Unless anybody has any old business first. If not, then we'll do new business. Wolf, did you have a question about the frequency of meetings and meeting times and durations and whatnot?
No, I think we did great today for the most part. So I had asked if we maybe wanted to increase the meeting frequency so we don't have these 9:30 meetings. But I think a lot of that has to do with just staying on point and not delaying this, not talking more than we have to. Yours truly.
I don't
But I
know if
think it
John
may-
or I don't know if John or Ken has an opinion on whether you would prefer to have 2 meetings a month for less time instead of 1 meeting that's lasts this long.
I'd be in favor of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2.5 meetings instead of 1 3-hour meetings. Sounds good to me.
I kind of feel the opposite because I feel like we're meeting at, I guess 5 o'clock wouldn't be too bad. But I don't know. I guess we'll play it by ear. If the agenda gets really full, then maybe we should consider an additional meeting or something. And I think to some extent we kind of do with work sessions.
I'll say this: what we shouldn't do is start earlier to accommodate the extra time we need to extend the meeting.
Right.
Because that was one of the major complaints that people had until about 1.5 years ago, that we would start the meeting so early that people that work in the general public, 9-to-5 jobs, weren't really able to attend. Not that that is so much of an issue anymore right now, with us being much more, out there with Zoom. But I wouldn't want to start necessarily early in the day. It burns into my workday for sure. I know that's true
Right.
for most of you. And if we were to move to a bi-weekly meeting, we probably need to start thinking about alternating agenda items. So we don't need to talk about every project, every meeting, right? There's maybe then an alternation of projects we talk about.
Right. I mean, I don't know if we can cut the financial part out and have that one night and
For
then,
sure.
Have projects another night.
For sure.
So
Ken, any opinion?
I being, for a year now, a year and a half, I think that when things like some of the bigger projects, all the wells, the biggest part is Underwood. I think takes the majority of the time because of all the projects going on. And I think as projects get finished, I think like tonight, if we stay on point and start on time, and I think you probably could get it done in one meeting, I mean, I think maybe if there's something particular, then the special circumstances, which we have done, we could have like a special meeting just with Underwood, and then have the next week meeting or whatever. They don't have to be there, but for special circumstances. But I don't necessarily think that we need to have every month 2 meetings. I think it maybe be open to the idea if there's a heavy caseload or something special going on with Underwood with like one, like Wells 2 or or in 7 and 8, for those discussions. And maybe kind of have it, then we have a shorter meeting the following time. But I think as time goes, I think our, the plate will get smaller. So hopefully.
yeah, that's a good point.
I think
How
that would
about
be
this? How about,
Go ahead, John.
what if we have 1 meeting and say the meeting's over at 8 o'clock? And if we're not done, we're gonna have to have a second meeting. Now we're all incentivized to be brief.
Yeah.
Just popped in my head.
Well, and I think what Ken said is very true. I mean, we know about a week earlier, the week before the meeting, if things are piling up, right, and then we can still say, okay, let's not put them on the agenda for Monday. Let's rather organize a work session or a separate meeting. So, and really, I mean, with Jill and Ron, everything comes together on your end, right? So, I mean, if you guys sense, you know, if you guys sense the agenda is piling into past 8 o'clock, please ring the alarm bell and ask, should we do another meeting a week or two after?
It looks like she's looking up at him.
I mean, the
What's
other
that?
thing is,
All right.
go ahead. You're saying something, Ron?
Oh, I was saying, okay,
Oh,
that makes sense.
what I was just going to say too is, you know, we are putting a more of a burden on the staff by having another evening meeting too. So, you know, recognizing they're actually on salary here. So that's something we got to consider too. I wouldn't be too happy with my boss telling me to work overtime and my pay staying the same, an extra day a month, or evening a month. You already have one evening. I'm sure there's other evenings you guys are doing other stuff too, you know, so that you got to be a little sensitive to that, obviously. So my personal thing is keep it the way it is now. I think if there's a heavy agenda, then we should consider doing an interim meeting, a work session, whatever you want to call it. I mean, we did it last week, right? We had that extra special meeting we did on Monday. So if things develop like that, or if we see that there's a heavy agenda, maybe we'll say, look, maybe this month, let's call a special meeting again so that we can address an issue and not have to extend the regular meeting out to a very long evening. So that being said, if there's no other new business, we can move on to superintendent's report unless anybody else has any new business to offer. Seeing none, I guess you got the floor, Ron.
I just have a couple things actually. One of them that was on here was we did complete the roadway to the new well 9 piece. The stump letter that went out, the stumps have been removed. They've been dug up, but they're on the property waiting to be, on his property in a pile waiting to be hauled off. And the only other thing that I have would be we did receive the 90% drawings from Underwood, and that was already discussed earlier. So
What's any update on the 101 route update with the DOT that we met a few weeks ago up in Concord?
I still have to get some time together with Dave to get out there and do the markup. We've just been crazy busy, and I hopefully can get to that this week or the beginning of next week.
Yeah, just so you guys know, they're doing some improvements at Pennachuck Square and further up 101A down by, was that Boston Post Road?
Yes.
And we have to move some of our water lines, and some of that cost we need to incur, but some of the cost is going to be done by the state. And we just met with them to make sure we understood what our responsibilities were and what their responsibilities were. And I think it's a little bit less impactful than we thought it was going to be, right?
It is. And that's part of what I need to get out with Dave. Looking at the plans, when we went to Concord that day, I believe we may be out of the right of way in certain places too. So I don't think the plans that they were using were completely accurate.
I think they had our line mixed up with Pennachuck's line.
Yeah. That's my thought as well.
In one area anyway that I saw.
Yeah. So I did actually, Dave did went down and made some copies of the plans that he had on his iPad when we were up there, because I like to look at the whole plan, not just trying to blow things up on the iPad. So we had those made, and we're going to get out at some point, hopefully in the near future, and we can mark up a set of plans and actually do some confirming. We're going to try to mark it out with his electronic marking out equipment If that doesn't work, we're gonna wand it at the same time, and we're gonna actually do some exploratory digs as well, just to pinpoint and get it on the plan, so.
Yes, I just bring this up because I don't know if the commissioners realize, but in certain areas when the roadway improvement wants to be done by DOT or whoever, if our water line's in conflict, that's on us. In some cases, there's some cost burden on us to replace that. Even though you think it's their project, it should be cost burden on them entirely. That's not necessarily the law. So.
I think if I'm gonna say this right, Don, they're gonna pay, the portion needs to be replaced, they'll pay us what we spent
Right.
at the time, and we would just have to pay the difference of the new pipe going in the ground. The excavation and backfill is covered under the contract, I believe, as part of with the.
It's the material cost that's not covered.
Right.
I think it's just the pipe actually, right?
Yeah, just the pipe we'd be paying for, but and it's the difference between the two.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
and
All right.
Boston Post, whatever's on Boston Post would be 100% replaced, reimbursed. So it's not as bad as we were first thinking.
Right. We were first thinking it was just something that's going to be between $500,000 and $1 million or something. So that's why we all went up to Concord and said, what are you talking about? So, all right. If that's all we've got for, we're done with the superintendent's report, then the only thing left is questions from the press in public. And I can't tell, do we have anybody from the public here that's on the line or anything? I can't
We
tell.
only
from
have a Dave, which I'm assuming is our Dave.
Yes.
Oh, is he on? Okay.
How is he seeing that? And I'm not.
You know, I don't even see
Why are
that.
you seeing that? And I'm not, Wolf.
Because I paid extra. I don't know. He's on, when you go to participants, and he's not on the panelist tab, but on the attendees tab. And it's only Mr. Dave.
Okay.
Oh, I see it now
Oh.
too. Hey, you learn something every day. All right. So
Hi, Dave.
I don't think Dave has any questions, does he? Other
No,
than
come to think
that,
of it, we probably need to open the mic there. I mean, Dave is obviously an employee, so, but if we were to have somebody there, I don't think they could say anything. So we definitely need to open the mic.
Huh.
If this was not our Dave, or we weren't sure if this is our Dave, we need to open the mic for that person.
You want to open it up?
Attendees.
I love to talk. Here we go.
hey, while you're doing that, I just want to put a plug
Yeah, it's
in.
just me, guys.
Oh,
Good
there you
evening.
go. Hey, Dave.
Hey, Dave.
Okay.
For future reference, it might be important to know that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
otherwise, they can't say that they have anything to say.
Has the green thing around him.
Yeah, that's my boy. Sorry.
It is awesome.
Hey, Dave, you might want to hear this too. I just wanted to give a plug to you guys for getting Wells 4 and 5 treatment plan up online. And I know, it's been a lot of work. That with all of the irrigation ban and everything this summer, and I'm glad we're getting behind this finally. And this is getting, we're moving on, and thanks for all your efforts on that, and Ron and Jill included, and Dave and all the rest of the staff as well, the field staff and everything.
I'll make sure to pass that on to them. I always try to lift them when I can,
I think it helps coming from the commissioners too, though. We see that's
Yep.
what's going on too, so we might
Yes.
not say it enough.
Okay.
Just
I
wanted to
appreciate
let
that.
you guys know. All right, great. So at this point, I guess the next meeting is December 21st. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
I was moved
John moved.
by John first. We'll give Wolf a second on that. Go through roll call. John, in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Wolf?
Yes, sir.
Ken?
Yes.
And myself. So motion to adjourn passes 4-0-0. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you in the next month.
All right. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Goodbye.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Right.